Chapter 801. LV Hushan said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, as long as you kill Hall Master Shui, isn't that a practical action? Can you prove that you have nothing to do with Hall Master Shui? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was furious. LV Hushan, this is what Vice Hall Master Zhang asked you to do. How can you let me do it for you? LV Hushan sighed and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, don't forget that this is the only way to prove that you have nothing to do with Hall Master Shui. Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he sneered and continued. Yuan Weiqing, of course you can choose not to do it. But if you don't do it, you should know what will happen to you, right? Speaking of this, LV Hushan raised his fist and waved it gently in front of Yuan Weiqing. Looking at LV Hushan waving his fist, Yuan Weiqing remembered his current situation and hurriedly said, LV Hushan, we are good friends. How can you treat me like this? Hearing these words, LV Hushan's heart immediately flared up with fury. He suddenly kicked Yuan Weiqing, sending him flying. This kick was launched by LV Hushan in anger. Naturally, it was very heavy. Yuan Weiqing fell to the ground and spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood. He began to cough violently again. LV Hushan slowly came in front of Yuan Weiqing and said coldly, Yuan Weiqing, you still remember that we are friends. I remember clearly how you treated me just now. Yuan Weiqing barely suppressed his cough and said slowly, LV Hushan, I had no choice. If I didn't do it, Vice Hall Master Zhang would blame me. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, LV Hushan sneered, Yuan Weiqing, I'm really sorry. I'm the same as you. If I didn't do it, Vice Hall Master Zhang wouldn't let me go. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly felt a chill in his heart. LV Hushan, please don't. Let's make peace. Don't do it again. It will hurt our friendship. LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, you've already made a move and hurt our friendship. Do you think we're still friends? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, we are friends. We will always be good friends. Don't do anything. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a while before saying slowly, LV Hushan, why don't you tell Vice Hall Master Zhang that we should leave here and stop participating in this matter? What do you think? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, now that things have come to this, do you still think you can push it away? Let me tell you, today, you must prove that you have no relationship with Hall Master Shui. Otherwise, I will absolutely not let you off. Hearing LV Hushan's chilling words, Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, you also know that I'm drunk. How can I take it seriously? If I'm Hall Master Shui's man, how can I still be a protector? I should have become a Vice Hall Master long ago. LV Hushan suddenly sneered. Yuan Weiqing, isn't it going to happen soon? After this matter is over, I'm sure that you will definitely become a Vice Hall Master. But it's a pity that you didn't expect this to happen. It has affected your dream of becoming a Vice Hall Master. I'm really sorry. Yuan Weiqing was so anxious that cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He waved his hand repeatedly. No, LV Hushan, you're talking nonsense. How can I be the Vice Hall Master of the secret Thunder Sect in the South County? This is all your imagination. It's not true. LV Hushan shook his head and suddenly sneered. Yuan Weiqing, if I say it's true, what will you think? Really? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was shocked. What nonsense are you talking about? How can this be true? LV Hushan shook his head. No, Yuan Weiqing, this is definitely true. Before I came out, I heard someone say that Hall Master Shui is really going to promote you to be a Vice Hall Master. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't help but exclaim, LV Hushan, how do you know? How do you know it's true? LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, of course it's true. Why would I lie to you? You said that the missions you completed were all complicated missions. Don't you think that this was actually a test from Hall Master Shui? So far, you have completed all the missions that Hall Master Shui assigned to you. This means that Hall Master Shui's test for you is over. Since you have passed the test, the next step is to promote you to be a Vice Hall Master, right? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was shocked by a wave of joy. He asked in a trembling voice, "LV Hushan, is what you said true? You're not lying to me, right?" LV Hushan let out a sigh. "Yuan Weiqing, why would I lie to you? Think about it, haven't you completed those complicated tasks well?" Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing thought for a while and suddenly felt enlightened. Ever since he came to the secret Thunder sect in the South County, although he didn't feel anything before, ever since he became a guardian, he was busy every day and had no time to rest. The missions he completed were even more difficult than the previous one. However, it was also thanks to his patience that he was able to complete all these complicated tasks. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly felt that what LV Hushan said seemed to make sense. Because there was no reason for him to complete all the complicated missions of the secret Thunder sect in the South County, right? Could it be that this was really a test from Hall Master Shui? LV Hushan saw Yuan Weiqing lowering his head and not saying anything. He knew that Yuan Weiqing believed his words, so he continued. "Yuan Weiqing, do you understand now? I'm really not lying to you. When I heard this news, I didn't believe it because you always completed those simple missions, and we completed those complicated missions. Why can you be the Vice Hall Master and we can't?" After listening to your explanation, I finally understood that we were the ones who completed the truly simple mission, while you were the ones who completed the truly complicated one. These missions were also a test for you, so I believe it. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing sighed in his heart. He was really unlucky. It seemed that he could have been the Vice Hall Master, but after being tormented by Zhang Chunren, there was probably no hope for this matter. It was not that there was no hope, but despair. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing secretly glanced at the unconscious Hall Master Shui in the distance, and a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. If Hall Master Shui could survive and continue to be the Hall Master of the secret Thunder sect in the South County, then wouldn't he be able to be the Vice Hall Master? After understanding this, Yuan Weiqing really hoped that Hall Master Shui would escape as soon as possible. Because only if Hall Master Shui escaped and continued to be the Hall Master of the secret Thunder sect in the South County would he have the chance to be the Vice Hall Master. However, at this point, Yuan Weiqing also knew that this was impossible. Hall Master Shui was already seriously injured and no longer had the strength to fight back. In addition, Zhang Chunren was indeed very tall. Even if Hall Master Shui was not injured, he might not be a match for him, let alone now. There was no chance at all. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing was extremely disappointed. He even hoped that today's matter was just a dream. When he woke up, Hall Master Shui would have already announced that he would be the Vice Hall Master. Seeing Yuan Weiqing's expression constantly changing, LV Hushan suddenly sighed. "Vice Hall Master Yuan, do you feel that it's a pity?" Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing subconsciously nodded. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly realized and hurriedly changed his words. "LV Hushan, what nonsense are you talking about? What's there to pity about?" LV Hushan sighed. "Isn't it a pity? If there are no accidents, I might have to call you Vice Hall Master Yuan tomorrow. Isn't it a pity enough?" Hearing LV Hushan's address of him, Yuan Weiqing suddenly felt a wave of hatred towards Zhang Chunren. If Zhang Chunren had not caused trouble here, LV Hushan's words would have come true. He had struggled for so many years in the secret Thunder sect in the South County, and he had finally gotten a satisfactory result. How good was this? What a pity, what a pity! Yuan Weiqing suddenly raised his head and looked at LV Hushan. He wanted to discuss whether it was possible for the two of them to join forces and take Hall Master Shui away. This was because Yuan Weiqing knew that as long as they could take Hall Master Shui away today, he would definitely be able to become the Vice Hall Master. On one hand, it was because of the rumor that LV Hushan had mentioned. On the other hand, he had indeed saved Hall Master Shui once. Yuan Weiqing was about to speak his thoughts when he heard LV Hushan sneer and speak first. Yuan Weiqing, are you trying to persuade me to go with you to take Hall Master Shui away? Although Yuan Weiqing thought so, he was still shocked when he heard these words from LV Hushan. His voice was trembling as he spoke. What are you doing? LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing said these two words, but he didn't continue. This was because he suddenly saw a trace of coldness in LV Hushan's eyes. LV Hushan nodded and asked with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, what do you want to say? Why don't you continue? I'm still waiting to hear it. Yuan Weiqing was shocked. He hurriedly waved his hand and said with a forced smile, Nothing, I don't have anything to say. LV Hushan frowned and asked in a low voice, Yuan Weiqing, what do you think of my proposal? Let's save Hall Master Shui. Then, Hall Master Shui will definitely let you be the Vice Hall Master. At that time, don't forget me. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was even more uncertain about what he was thinking. Although Yuan Weiqing was also injured, his martial arts were higher than LV Hushan's. Therefore, if he fought now, LV Hushan would definitely not be his opponent. But the problem was that LV Hushan had Zhang Chunren behind him. Yuan Weiqing was sure that if he dared to fight LV Hushan, Zhang Chunren would definitely kill him without mercy. Although he was seriously injured now, Yuan Weiqing still wanted to live well, so he could only endure. Yuan Weiqing really wanted to save Hall Master Shui, but he did not know what LV Hushan was thinking, so he dared not tell his true thoughts. If what LV Hushan said was all lies, then it would really be terrible. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing was still unwilling to speak, LV Hushan sighed and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, do you still not dare to believe me? Yuan Weiqing asked in a trembling voice, LV Hushan, believe what? LV Hushan smiled coldly, of course it's about saving Hall Master Shui. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing subconsciously glanced at Zhang Chunren. Seeing that he was not looking at him, he was slightly relieved. He turned his head to look at LV Hushan and whispered, LV Hushan, don't talk nonsense. If Vice Hall Master Zhang knows about this, you will be in trouble. LV Hushan did not answer Yuan Weiqing's words, but asked, Yuan Weiqing, do you really not want to save Hall Master Shui? Yuan Weiqing secretly gritted his teeth, but there was no change on his face. He shook his head, LV Hushan, I don't want to. Hearing this, LV Hushan sighed, Yuan Weiqing, I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. Hall Master Shui is so good to you, but you are still indifferent. Yuan Weiqing forced a smile and waved his hand, LV Hushan, that's just your guess. How could the truth be like that? LV Hushan shook his head, Yuan Weiqing, what I said is true. I'm not the only one who heard about this. Others also heard about it. They also said that when we come back, they will treat you to a meal. They want to have a good relationship with you before you become the Vice Hall Master. Yuan Weiqing, I'm not lying to you. It's all true. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing finally sighed, LV Hushan, don't say any more. What's the use of it? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, LV Hushan hurriedly said, Yuan Weiqing, how can it be useless? As long as you and I work together, we can definitely save Hall Master Shui. Yuan Weiqing shook his head, LV Hushan, don't talk nonsense. Vice Hall Master Zhang's martial arts are very strong. With our current martial arts, do you think it's possible to save Hall Master Shui? LV Hushan nodded, Yuan Weiqing, of course it's possible. Have you forgotten that we have the Thunderbolt Pill? As long as we use the Thunderbolt Pill to sneak attack Vice Hall Master Zhang, with the two of us working together, we might really succeed. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing's eyes suddenly lit up. Although their martial arts had decreased by more than half, so what if they didn't know martial arts? As long as they had the Thunderbolt Pill in hand and used a sneak attack, they might really succeed. Thinking of the possibility of success, Yuan Weiqing felt a burst of excitement and his heart pounded non-stop. If he could save Hall Master Shui, he would definitely be the Vice Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County in the future. It was even very likely that he would become the Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County in the future. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing turned his head to look at Hall Master Shui in the distance, and began to plan in his heart. He then turned his head to look at Vice Hall Master Zhang, but found that he was still thinking about something. Chapter 802. Seeing Yuan Weiqing's expression, LV Hushan hurriedly said, "Yuan Weiqing, don't hesitate. If you hesitate again, I'm afraid we'll be discovered." Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing became even more excited. His breathing became rapid, and for a moment, he was speechless. This matter was too dangerous. If there was a slight mistake with Deputy Hall Chief Zhang's martial arts, it would be a piece of cake for him to kill the two of them. Yuan Weiqing gasped for breath for a while, then he calmed down a little and said in a low voice, "LV Hushan, do you really want to do this?" LV Hushan sighed. "Yuan Weiqing, Hall Chief Shui has been good to me. How can I harm him?" After saying this, LV Hushan lowered his head and looked at Yuan Weiqing. "Yuan Weiqing, Hall Chief Shui has been so good to you. Don't you want to repay him?" Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth. "LV Hushan, okay, I'll listen to you." Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for LV Hushan to answer him. "LV Hushan, don't lie to me." LV Hushan shook his head slightly. "Yuan Weiqing, why would I lie to you? I just hope that when you become the Deputy Hall Chief in the future, you won't forget me." Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing nodded and said in a low voice, "LV Hushan, don't worry. If I really become the Deputy Hall Chief, I'll definitely find a way to make you the Deputy Hall Chief. What do you think?" Hearing this, LV Hushan immediately smiled and nodded. "Yuan Weiqing, thank you very much." Yuan Weiqing secretly glanced at Deputy Hall Chief Zhang. When he didn't notice, he lowered his voice and said, "LV Hushan, how should we do it?" LV Hushan frowned slightly and said slowly, "Yuan Weiqing, Deputy Hall Chief Zhang's martial arts skills are much higher than ours. We must be careful." Speaking up to this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment before saying slowly, "Yuan Weiqing, how about this? You pretend to admit your relationship with Hall Master Shui, and then the two of us will go to Vice Hall Master Zhang and admit our mistake. When we get close to Vice Hall Master Zhang, the two of us will suddenly attack him." Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was shocked. "LV Hushan, how can we do that? Vice Hall Master Zhang is much more powerful than us. If we attack him, won't we be asking for trouble?" Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan sighed and slowly said, "Yuan Weiqing, you are right. Vice Hall Master Zhang's martial arts are much higher than ours. If we want to fight her, it is absolutely impossible to succeed. But don't forget that this is a sneak attack. I believe that with our sneak attack, we will definitely succeed." Yuan Weiqing frowned. "LV Hushan, I'm afraid that won't work. Even if we succeed, we might not be able to injure Deputy Hall Leader Zhang. What's the use of that?" LV Hushan shook his head and said, "Yuan Weiqing, if we sneak attack Vice Hall Master Zhang, we definitely won't be able to injure him. However, my goal is not to injure him, but to prevent him from using the thunderclap pill on us. Do you understand?" Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing suddenly realized something. Zhang Chuanren's martial arts were strong, and the way he used the thunderclap pill was many times better than the two of them. If Zhang Chunren was prepared, even if he did not use martial arts, with his skills, as long as he used the thunderclap pill, he would be able to kill the two of them. LV Hushan sneered and said, "If we sneak attack Zhang Chunren, he will inevitably dodge in a hurry. At that time, we will immediately use the thunderclap pill to attack him. I believe that when he is in a hurry, he will definitely be hit by the thunderclap pill. At that time, as long as one thunderclap pill works, our sneak attack will succeed. Do you understand? After hearing LV Hushan's explanation, Yuan Weiqing immediately understood his battle plan. After thinking carefully, he nodded. LV Hushan, you are right. If we attack directly, we are not sure. However, if we use a sneak attack to make him panic first, our chances of success will be higher. Yuan Weiqing was very clear that if the two of them used the thunderclap pill on Zhang Chunren now, with Zhang Chunren's skills, their attack would definitely not succeed. Therefore, they could only use a sneak attack to make Zhang Chunren lower his guard. Only then could they injure Zhang Chunren. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing agreed to his suggestion, LV Hushan nodded slightly and said, Yuan Weiqing, since you agree, let's get ready to start. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was about to agree, but he suddenly said, LV Hushan, your current situation is not good. If you want to fight, how much of your combat power can you use? Hearing this sentence, LV Hushan remembered why he was so seriously injured. He couldn't help but glare at Yuan Weiqing fiercely and sighed, Yuan Weiqing, if you weren't so ruthless just now, my injuries wouldn't be so serious. But now I only have 20% of my strength left. Hearing LV Hushan say his strength, Yuan Weiqing sighed in his heart. If he knew this, he wouldn't have injured LV Hushan. Although LV Hushan's arm was injured, his internal injuries were all caused by himself. LV Hushan, I'm really sorry. After this matter is over, I will definitely apologize to you. LV Hushan waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, it's meaningless to say these things. Hurry up and get ready. We are ready to fight Zhang Chunren. Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth and nodded. All right, I'm ready. When he said this, even Yuan Weiqing himself could feel that his voice was trembling slightly. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, LV Hushan immediately nodded, asked loudly, Yuan Weiqing, do you admit that Hall Leader Xue is very good to you? Hearing this sentence, Yuan Weiqing was stunned. When he was about to refuse, he saw LV Hushan constantly winking at him. He immediately understood and hurriedly nodded. I admit. LV Hushan sneered, Yuan Weiqing, do you admit that your relationship with Hall Leader Xue is very good? Yuan Weiqing hesitated again and slowly said, that was in the past. Now it's different. LV Hushan nodded, Yuan Weiqing, do you know that you are wrong? Yuan Weiqing sighed, I already know. LV Hushan laughed, in that case, why don't you hurry up and admit your mistake to Hall Leader Zhang and beg for his forgiveness? Yuan Weiqing nodded, okay. At this point, LV Hushan turned his head and winked at Yuan Weiqing. Then he said loudly to Zhang Chunren, Deputy Hall Leader Zhang, Yuan Weiqing already knows his mistake, so he wants to beg for your forgiveness. Hearing Yuan Weiqing really admit it, Zhang Chunren sneered, since he has already admitted it, what else is there to say? Hurry up and do it. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing was shocked and hurriedly said loudly, Deputy Hall Leader Zhang, I know my mistake. Please forgive me this time. I won't dare to do it again. While speaking, Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth and turned his head to give LV Hushan a subtle look. Then, he begged loudly and slowly walked toward Zhang Chunren. Yuan Weiqing took a few steps forward and saw LV Hushan coming from the side. He was slightly relieved and begged more loudly. At the same time, he quickened his pace. Deputy Hall Leader Zhang, please, give me another chance. Although Hall Leader Xue was very good to me before, it was all in the past. In fact, I was very dissatisfied with him, but he is the Hall Leader. I can't do anything about it, Yuan Weiqing begged as he walked forward. Soon, he was not far from Zhang Chunren. Zhang Chunren looked at the approaching Yuan Weiqing, sighed and slowly said, Yuan Weiqing, can you face me? From the beginning, I wanted to focus on training you, and let you become a figure like the one-armed Saber King. But what about you? You're simply too disappointing. You've never done anything I asked you to do well. How do you expect me to forgive you? Yuan Weiqing said loudly, Deputy Hall Leader Zhang, please give me another chance. Although I didn't perform well before, I will definitely perform well in the future. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing saw LV Hushan coming over. His heart suddenly beat more violently. He gritted his teeth, suppressed his excitement, and said slowly, Deputy Hall Leader Zhang, I have a secret that I want to tell you. I hope that I can use this secret to exchange for your forgiveness. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren was also curious. He asked doubtfully, Yuan Weiqing, what's the secret? Yuan Weiqing turned his head and glanced at LV Hushan. Then, he took 2 steps forward and got closer to Zhang Chunren. Deputy Hall Leader Zhang, this secret can only be told to you. No one else can hear it. While speaking, Yuan Weiqing took another step forward. At this moment, he was only 1 step away from Zhang Chunren. Zhang Chunren frowned. Yuan Weiqing, if you have something to say it quickly. Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He sneered and continued to speak on his own. Yuan Weiqing, if this secret is not important, don't blame me for being rude to you. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself for being disappointing. Do you understand? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly nodded his head, bowed slightly, and suddenly let out a roar. Do it! As Yuan Weiqing said this, he stomped hard on the ground and rushed toward Zhang Chunren like lightning. Yuan Weiqing attacked Zhang Chunren's left side. According to the plan, LV Hushan should attack Zhang Chunren's right side. With the 2 of them attacking Zhang Chunren from the left and right, Zhang Chunren, who was caught off guard, would panic and retreat. At this moment, Yuan Weiqing had nothing else in his mind. He only had Zhang Chunren in front of him. He knew that if he didn't defeat Zhang Chunren, everything would be over. Stake it all in one throw. Although Yuan Weiqing only had 1 arm left, the wind from his fist was whistling. His strength was indeed not to be underestimated. For this punch, Yuan Weiqing had used all the strength in his body because he knew that once he failed, it would be useless even if he had the strength left. With Zhang Chunren's martial arts skills, as long as they failed this time, they would never have a second chance. Therefore, Yuan Weiqing had tried his best to make this blow more effective. It was impossible to rely on this punch to defeat Zhang Chunren. Even Yuan Weiqing himself wouldn't believe it. The function of his punch was just like what he said just now. It was to make Zhang Chunren panic and forget to use the thunderclap pill to attack him. This was the greatest success. Yuan Weiqing's teeth were clenched tightly. Although it was only a short time, large beads of sweat had appeared on his forehead. When Yuan Weiqing punched, he knew that Zhang Chunren had no other choice but to retreat. Yuan Weiqing was on Zhang Chunren's left side, and LV Hushan was on Zhang Chunren's right side. The 2 were attacking from both sides. Zhang Chunren had no other way except to retreat. Therefore, Yuan Weiqing was not worried that Zhang Chunren would dodge, and he was also prepared. As long as Zhang Chunren retreated, he could immediately take out the thunderclap pill to launch an attack. Similarly, the thunderclap pill he threw out also attacked Zhang Chunren's left side, and LV Hushan on the other side used the thunderclap pill to attack Zhang Chunren's right side. Zhang Chunren had nowhere to hide. The reason why Yuan Weiqing agreed to this plan was that he had already calculated it very clearly. If he went all out, it was not impossible for him to succeed. Although the probability of success was not very high, there was still a possibility of success. It was precisely because of this reason that Yuan Weiqing decided to take a risk. If he succeeded, he was certain that as long as he saved Hall Master Shui, he would definitely be able to become the Vice Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County. He might even become the Hall Master. It was for this future that Yuan Weiqing decided to take a risk. Although this plan was very dangerous, The benefits he would obtain if he succeeded would definitely be huge. In the eyes of outsiders, the gap between a guardian and a hall master might not be too big. However, as a guardian of the secret Thunder sect in the South County, Yuan Weiqing knew very well that the status of a guardian and a hall master was simply worlds apart. In the secret Thunder sect in the South County, the most powerful person was of course Hall Master Shui, and the second most powerful person was the Vice Hall Master Zhang Chunren. Next, it was time to protect the Dharma. Although there was only a difference of one level, this level was a gap that could never be crossed. If he could become a hall master from a guardian, it would be no less than a fish leaping through the tiger gate. Yuan Weiqing wanted to be that fish, a fish that successfully crossed the gap. Suddenly, just as Yuan Weiqing's fist was about to hit Zhang Chunren, he felt a blur in front of his eyes. Zhang Chunren had already dodged to the right. Seeing this scene, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. He subconsciously looked to the side and cried out in surprise. LV Hushan, who should have appeared on the right, did not appear. There was no one on the right. What was going on? Just as Yuan Weiqing was feeling puzzled, he saw Zhang Chunren had already dodged to the right and punched him. Seeing Zhang Chunren's fist coming, Yuan Weiqing wanted to dodge, but how could he dodge Zhang Chunren's attack? Chapter 803. Yuan Weiqing was hit by Yuan Weiqing's punch and immediately let out a shrill scream as he was sent flying far away. Yuan Weiqing fell heavily to the ground. He screamed again in pain and couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His whole body was powerless as he lay on the ground. Feeling the intense pain from his arm, although Yuan Weiqing was in a semi-conscious state, he could feel that his other arm was probably finished. Zhang Chunren's punch had broken his remaining intact arm. Yuan Weiqing endured the pain and wanted to sit up, but just as he moved his arm, he screamed in pain and didn't dare to move again. Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth and turned to look at LV Hushan. According to the original plan, LV Hushan should appear on the right side. However, LV Hushan didn't appear where he should be. Could it be that LV Hushan was defeated by Zhang Chunren so quickly? Yuan Weiqing's gaze turned to the front. When he saw the scene clearly, his expression suddenly froze. At this moment it was as if he had forgotten the pain. LV Hushan was standing in front of Zhang Chunren, bowing. What was he saying? Seeing this scene, Yuan Weiqing suddenly understood. He understood everything. He had been fooled. Just now, LV Hushan said that he wanted to join forces with him. In fact, he was scheming against him. The reason why he didn't see anyone on the right side wasn't because LV Hushan was defeated, but because LV Hushan didn't make a move. He had been watching the show from the side. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing wanted to roar. However, his body was in too much pain. Even if he wanted to shout, he couldn't. Under Yuan Weiqing's gaze, LV Hushan and Zhang Chunren said a few words and then turned around and walked over. Yuan Weiqing's eyes stared fiercely at LV Hushan. After he walked over, he panted and said, LV Hushan, you lied to me? LV Hushan shook his head and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, when did I lie to you? Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth. LV Hushan, just now you said that you would join forces but you didn't. Aren't you lying to me? Hearing this, LV Hushan suddenly sighed and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, I'm not lying to you. I'm testing you. Don't you understand? You are the person who has the best relationship with Hall Master Shui. For Hall Master Shui, you actually dared to attack Vice Hall Master Zhang. This is really unexpected. LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question. Instead, he sneered and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, I admire your courage, but I will never do what you did, because I will never betray Vice Hall Master Zhang. I was just testing him. Do you understand? Yuan Weiqing clenched his teeth and shouted, LV Hushan, you're lying to me. You're not a good person. To think that I treated you as a good friend. You really disappoint me. Hearing this, LV Hushan suddenly sneered. Yuan Weiqing, if you really treat me as a good friend, then who did this to me? It's you, the so-called good friend, who did this to me. Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment and felt a little guilty. But soon, he said loudly, LV Hushan, although I hit you, I was merciful. How could I be as despicable as you? How dare you lie to me? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, when you hit me for the first time, I actually didn't treat you as a friend. Because if you were really my friend, you would never attack me. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly sneered. LV Hushan, you said that I'm sorry, but think about it. Between the two of us, who started it? Hearing this, LV Hushan's expression suddenly froze, and he hurriedly waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, I don't want to talk about this now. I just want to tell you that you're finished. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, since we used to be friends, if you have any last words, just say it quickly. Let's see if I can do it for you. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing's heart suddenly turned cold, and he asked in shock, LV Hushan, are you going to attack me? LV Hushan nodded. Deputy Hall Master Zhang said that since you dared to betray him, you must not be allowed to live. After hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was so scared that he struggled to sit up, but his injuries were too serious. How could he get up? After a violent struggle, he finally began to cough violently. LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, don't blame me for being cruel. This is all your own doing. If you had listened to me, why would you end up like this? Yuan Weiqing coughed so badly that he couldn't hear what LV Hushan said. After a while, Yuan Weiqing's coughing became a little lighter, and his mind was much clearer. LV Hushan, are you really going to attack me? LV Hushan nodded. Yuan Weiqing, this is Deputy Hall Master Zhang's order. I won't violate it. So, if you have any last words or unfulfilled wishes, just say it quickly. If I can do it for you, I will definitely help you. Speaking of this, LV Hushan's tone paused, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his words, his eyes suddenly lit up. He turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked tentatively, Yuan Weiqing, are you worried about your family? What? Hearing this, the blue veins on Yuan Weiqing's forehead suddenly popped out and he roared, LV Hushan, what are you going to do? Stay away from my family, do you understand? LV Hushan didn't take it seriously, and he just sighed. Yuan Weiqing, now that things have come to this, there is nothing to say. You can rest assured. I will take care of your family for you. Nonsense. Yuan Weiqing was almost mad. LV Hushan, you can't do this. LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, don't be so polite. We are good friends, don't you think so? Seeing that there was no turning back, Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth. LV Hushan, I beg you, just take it as my last request as a good friend. Stay away from my family, okay? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, I am different from you. I am not a ruthless person. Although you don't treat me as a friend, I always treat you as a friend. Now that you are in trouble, how can I not care about your family, don't you think so? Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, I beg you, just take it as I sincerely beg you. Let me go this time, okay? LV Hushan slowly raised his hand and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, if I let you go, you will end up like me, understand? So you can rest assured. You only have one way to go, and I only have one way to go. Seeing LV Hushan raise his hand higher and higher, Yuan Weiqing was so scared that cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He kept looking around and suddenly saw Yi Tianhua lying in the distance. His heart was suddenly filled with joy, and he suddenly shouted, Yi Tianhua, wake up, come and save me! Hearing Yuan Weiqing's shout, LV Hushan's hand couldn't help but stop. He turned his head and saw that Yi Tianhua was lying there motionless. Only then did he feel relieved. He turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and sighed. Yuan Weiqing, it's not easy to be your friend. I was beaten up like this by you, and Yi Tianhua wanted to save you, but he was also beaten up like this by you. Yuan Weiqing, it seems that no matter who your good friend is, they will not have a good ending. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly regretted. If he didn't injure Yi Tianhua, maybe Vice Hall Master Zhang wouldn't dare to make a move. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing regretted even more. If he didn't sneak attack Yi Tianhua, he might have already left this place. LV Hushan looked at Yuan Weiqing and suddenly sneered. Yuan Weiqing, are you regretting it? Yuan Weiqing sighed. What's the use of regretting it? Things have already come to this. I only hope that you can be merciful and let me live. LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, that's impossible. If I let you go, not only will you not be able to escape, but I will also be finished. Do you understand? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing's heart suddenly moved. He lowered his voice and said, LV Hushan, why don't we go seek refuge with Yi Tianhua? With his martial arts, he should be able to protect us. LV Hushan turned his head and looked at Yi Tianhua. He sneered and said, Yuan Weiqing, are you dreaming? Yi Tianhua has already been beaten unconscious by you. Do you still want to rely on him to protect us? What a joke. Yuan Weiqing clenched his teeth. LV Hushan, not necessarily. Yi Tianhua's martial arts are so high. As long as he wakes up, he will definitely be able to protect us. LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, don't even think about it. Even if I let you go, what good will it do for me? Speaking of this, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his words, he continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, I'm fine now. As long as I get rid of you, Deputy Hall Master Zhang will treat me as one of his own. Why do you think I should take that risk? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was stunned. Only then did he react. If LV Hushan really did this, other than benefiting himself, it really wouldn't do him any good. The most important thing was that if LV Hushan dared to do this, Deputy Hall Master Zhang would definitely not let him go. Such a dangerous thing, even if it was him, he probably wouldn't do it. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing didn't speak, LV Hushan suddenly sneered. Yuan Weiqing, don't think about that. Hurry up and think about what unfinished business you have. Maybe I can help you? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing became nervous again. He hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, if you save me and then save Yi Tianhua will definitely give you a lot of benefits. Don't you want to get them? LV Hushan shook his head and sighed. Yuan Weiqing, I don't want anything now. As long as I can live peacefully, I'm already very satisfied. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly lowered his voice and said, LV Hushan, even if you get rid of me, can you guarantee that Deputy Hall Master Zhang will let you go? LV Hushan snorted coldly. Why not? As long as I listen to him and get rid of you, I will naturally become one of his people. Why would he do anything to me? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, why don't you understand? Even if you get rid of me, Deputy Hall Master Zhang will ask you to get rid of Hall Master Shui. After you finish this matter, Deputy Hall Master Zhang will definitely be afraid that you will tell others about this matter. At that time, I'm sure that he will definitely do something to you. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued to speak. LV Hushan, this is different from just now. Just now, there were two of us. If he wants to deal with you, he has to deal with both of us. It's a lot more troublesome, so at least it's safer. But if you're alone, I'm afraid you won't be so lucky, right? Hearing this, LV Hushan was silent. After a while, he sneered and said, Yuan Weiqing, don't say any more. Do you think I will believe your words? Let me tell you, Deputy Hall Master Zhang has promised me that when he becomes the Hall Master, I will be the Deputy Hall Master. Why would he harm me? Deputy Hall Master? After Yuan Weiqing repeated this sentence, he immediately sneered. LV Hushan, do you really think that you can be the Deputy Hall Master with your martial arts? Hearing this, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment, and then he was furious. Why not? Yuan Weiqing glanced at LV Hushan's arm and asked with a sneer, LV Hushan, don't you know what you are now? With your current martial arts, it's already very good that you can be a protector. How could he let you be the Deputy Hall Master? This is obviously perfunctory. It's ridiculous that you actually believed it, haha. Hearing this, LV Hushan frowned and felt a chill in his heart. Anyway, Yuan Weiqing was right. His martial arts were not high enough before. Now that he had lost an arm, his martial arts had declined a lot. With his current martial arts, it was already very good for him to be a disciple of the Tanlei sect in the South County, let alone the Deputy Hall Master. Could it be that what Yuan Weiqing said was true? After he finished these things, Deputy Hall Master Zhang would make a move on him? Seeing LV Hushan standing there and looking around, Yuan Weiqing knew that he had already believed his words, so he hurriedly continued. LV Hushan, I originally wanted to join forces with you to change this situation, but I really didn't expect that you would go back on your word halfway. If you didn't go back on your word, maybe this problem would have been solved under the sneak attack of the two of us. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing lowered his tone and continued, LV Hushan, if the two of us succeeded just now, then the Tanlei sect in the South County would be under the two of us. Do you still care about the Deputy Hall Master? Don't you think so? Hearing this, LV Hushan was suddenly stunned. He only thought about how to deal with Yuan Weiqing and trick him, but he really didn't think about this problem. If Hall Master Shui and Deputy Hall Master Zhang were gone, then he and Yuan Weiqing, the two protectors, would be the bosses of the Tanlei sect in the South County. At that time, why would he be afraid of other people's threats? Chapter 804. Seeing LV Hushan lowering his head in silence, Yuan Weiqing let out a sigh. LV Hushan, I'm really speechless. If the two of us had attacked just now, do you think we would have succeeded? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment and then shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, to tell you the truth, it's impossible. What? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing was shocked and asked in a trembling voice, LV Hushan, what did you say? Is there no possibility at all? LV Hushan nodded and said with a sneer, Yuan Weiqing, haven't you seen that Vice Hall Master Zhang's martial arts are too high? Even if Hall Master Shui wakes up, I'm afraid he may not be his match. In addition, he is very suspicious. Do you think he can't guess what we just said? At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. I think he must have guessed it. So even if the two of us join forces, we are definitely not his match. Maybe if I didn't suddenly decide not to make a move, the two of us would have already been killed by him. Do you believe me? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was also a little annoyed. LV Hushan, should I be grateful that you didn't attack? LV Hushan smiled coldly. Yuan Weiqing, there's no need to be grateful. I just want to tell you that if you want to resist now, you can only dream about it. Do you understand? Seeing the coldness in LV Hushan's eyes again, Yuan Weiqing was shocked. He hurriedly waved his hand and said in a low voice, LV Hushan, quickly think of a way. As long as the two of us join forces to get rid of Vice Hall Master Zhang, you will be the Hall Master of the Tanlei sect in the South County. This is a great thing. Don't you want to? After hearing what Yuan Weiqing said, LV Hushan hesitated again. If they could really get rid of Vice Hall Master Zhang, maybe what Yuan Weiqing said could really come true. As for the problem of Hall Master Shui, it was even easier to solve. As long as he was sent to accompany Vice Hall Master Zhang, the Tanlei sect in the South County would be their world in the future. However, although the benefits were huge, it was simply impossible to complete this task. Among all the people present, only Vice Hall leader Zhang was not injured at all. Moreover, his martial arts were very high. Even if all the people present joined forces, they might not necessarily be his opponent. Could they really kill Vice Hall Master Zhang with just these 2 injured members? Seeing that LV Hushan was a little moved, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly said, "LV Hushan, you have to think carefully. If you really succeed this time, your life will change dramatically. From then on, you will be a famous figure in South County. However, if you listen to Vice Hall Master Zhang and get rid of me, even if you can survive in the future, you should know what kind of life you will have, right?" Hearing this, LV Hushan suddenly sighed. "Yuan Weiqing, do you think I don't want to? But let me tell you, it's impossible to do it with just the 2 of us." Speaking of this, LV Hushan turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and suddenly sneered. "Yuan Weiqing, since it's impossible, why should I do it? Don't you think so?" Yuan Weiqing knew that as long as he could not persuade LV Hushan, he would probably end up very miserable, so he could only wave his hand repeatedly. "LV Hushan, it's not necessarily true. It's not that there is no way, but we haven't thought about it yet. I believe that there is a way to solve everything, even this matter is no exception." LV Hushan nodded. "Yuan Weiqing, since you said that there is a way, then tell me quickly. Maybe I will be happy to hear it and I will really let you go this time." After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was a little relieved and hurriedly said, "LV Hushan, don't worry. Let me think about it. There must be a way." After saying this, Yuan Weiqing immediately frowned, but he was thinking quickly in his heart. How to solve this problem? Vice Hall Master Zhang's martial arts were too high. It was absolutely impossible to defeat him head-on. He was an obvious example. But what else could he do? Use the Thunderbolt pill? Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing shook his head again. This would not work. Vice Hall Master Zhang used the Thunderbolt pill. It was almost impossible to defeat him with the Thunderbolt pill. But apart from these 2 things, what else could defeat him? What about Vice Hall Master Zhang? Seeing Yuan Weiqing frowning more and more, LV Hushan sighed. "Yuan Weiqing, I advise you not to waste your energy. There's no other way. You'd better save your energy and let me send you on your way." Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. He hurriedly waved his hand and said in a trembling voice, "LV Hushan, don't worry. Let me think about it. Maybe I can really think of a good way. At that time, you will be the Hall Master of the Tanlei sect in the South County." Hearing the word, Hall Master, LV Hushan gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "Then think quickly. If it takes too long, Vice Hall Master Zhang will definitely be suspicious. At that time, even if you think of a way, I can only kill you first." After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing did not even have time to nod. He immediately lowered his head and thought carefully. After a while, Yuan Weiqing's eyes suddenly lit up. He hurriedly raised his head to look at LV Hushan and said in a low voice, "LV Hushan, do you have a way to wake up Hall Master Shui?" Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan was shocked. "Yuan Weiqing, what do you want to do?" Yuan Weiqing said in a low voice, "LV Hushan, if you can wake up Hall Master Shui and ask him to help us block Vice Hall Master Zhang, at that time, as long as the 2 of us help from the side, we might be able to successfully defeat Vice Hall Master Zhang. Don't you think so?" Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment. Then, he sneered, "Yuan Weiqing, so you're lying to me. You're doing this because you want me to let you go, right?" Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. "How can that be? I'm thinking about how to get rid of Vice Hall Master Zhang and let you become the Hall Master of the Tanlei sect in the South County." LV Hushan sneered, "Yuan Weiqing, do you think that I'm a 3-year-old child? As long as I'm deceived by you, I'll be fooled?" Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer him, he continued. Yuan Weiqing, if Hall Master Shui wakes up, even if the three of us join forces to defeat Vice Hall Master Zhang, as long as Hall Master Shui is here, how can I become the Hall Master of the Tanlei sect in the South County? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was stunned and couldn't speak for a moment. LV Hushan was right. Yuan Weiqing wanted to escape this disaster now. As for other things, he really didn't think so much. As long as Hall Master Shui woke up, even if his martial arts were not as good as Vice Hall Master Zhang's, he could at least resist for a while. As long as Hall Master Shui blocked Vice Hall Master Zhang, he could take the opportunity to escape. In fact, this was his real thought. Although LV Hushan had seen through his mind, Yuan Weiqing would never admit it because he knew that as long as he admitted it, he would no longer have the chance to escape. At this moment, Yuan Weiqing didn't even dare to think about practicing martial arts or becoming a deputy hall master. All he wanted to do was to escape. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing was tongue-tied and speechless, LV Hushan was a little annoyed in his heart. I still treat you as a friend, but you're scheming against me. Now, it's useless for you to say anything. Hurry up and go on your way. After speaking, LV Hushan raised his hand and was about to make a move. Yuan Weiqing was scared out of his wits and hurriedly waved his hand. Wait, LV Hushan, wait a moment. It's not too late to make a move after listening to me. LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, what else do you have to say? Haven't you lied to me enough? Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, I'm not lying to you. What I said is true. Don't you understand? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered. Yuan Weiqing, if we awaken Hall Master Shui according to your method, how can I be the Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County? Yuan Weiqing, do you really think I don't know what you're thinking? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing sighed and said slowly, LV Hushan, why don't you understand? If this matter succeeds, I will also benefit greatly. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing turned to look at LV Hushan and said sincerely, LV Hushan, to be honest, if you become the Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County, will you promote me to be the Vice Hall Master? It was just a nice sentence. Who didn't know how to say it? LV Hushan immediately nodded. Of course, we used to be friends. Once I become the Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County, you will definitely be the Vice Hall Master. Yuan Weiqing nodded. That's it. If this matter succeeds, you will be the Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County, and I will be the Vice Hall Master. This is such a good thing. How could I lie to you? Hearing this, LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, since you didn't lie to me, what's going on? After this matter is done, what will happen to Hall Master Shui? Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, LV Hushan, Vice Hall Master Zhang set up today's trap in order to become the Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County. He wants to kill Hall Master Shui. Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer him. He sneered and continued to speak. LV Hushan, since Vice Hall Master Zhang can do such a thing in order to become the Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County, why can't we do it? Don't you think so? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was shocked. He asked in a trembling voice, Yuan Weiqing, do you mean that after this matter is done, we will get rid of Hall Master Shui? Yuan Weiqing nodded and said with a sneer, LV Hushan, for our future, we can only wrong Hall Master Shui, don't you think so? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan nodded subconsciously, but then he reacted. How can we do that? Hall Master Shui is good to us. If we do something to him, wouldn't it be against our morals? Morals? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing sneered. LV Hushan, you're too confused. Do you think that Hall Master Shui is not good to Vice Hall Master Zhang? If not, How could Hall Master Shui promote him to be Vice Hall Master Zhang? Yuan Weiqing turned his head to look at LV Hushan and gritted his teeth. Vice Hall Master Zhang can do something to Hall Master Shui for his future. Do you think that you're inferior to Vice Hall Master Zhang? Hearing this, LV Hushan frowned. But Hall Master Shui is really good to us? At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, let me tell you the truth. I said that Hall Master Shui wants to promote you to the position of Deputy Hall Master. This news is very reliable. Perhaps if this didn't happen today, Hall Master Shui would have already announced it to everyone when we returned. Yuan Weiqing is so good to you. Can you really do something to him? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing immediately waved his hand and said with a smile, LV Hushan, why are you so confused? What's the relationship between me and Hall Master Shui? What's the relationship between you and me? Don't forget that we're good friends. If I had to choose, I'd rather my good friend be the Hall Master of the Tanlei sect in the South County. Don't you think so? LV Hushan turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and sighed. Yuan Weiqing, do you really have the heart to do it? Yuan Weiqing didn't even hesitate and immediately nodded. LV Hushan, don't worry. As long as it's done, you don't have to do it. I'll do it. What do you think? LV Hushan looked at Yuan Weiqing and asked in a deep voice, Yuan Weiqing, can you really do it? Yuan Weiqing sighed. For the sake of our future, I can only wrong Hall Master Shui. At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued. LV Hushan, if we do it today, there's actually another advantage. We can push this matter to Vice Hall Master Zhang and say that he did it. Wouldn't this matter be perfect? Hearing this, LV Hushan was shocked. Yuan Weiqing, what if this matter is known by outsiders? Wouldn't that be terrible? Yuan Weiqing sneered, LV Hushan, when the time comes, only you and I will know about this matter. Can we still tell this matter to others? Don't worry, no one will know. You can prepare to be the Hall Master of the Tanlei sect in the South County. Hearing this, LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, there are many outsiders here. Other than Hall Master Shui and Vice Hall Master Zhang, there are also Tianhua and other people from the South County Shadow Alliance. When the time comes, what should we do with them? Should we get rid of them all? Chapter 805. Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing suddenly sneered. LV Hushan, have you forgotten what Vice Hall Master Zhang wants to do with Tianhua? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan almost exclaimed out loud. With a trembling voice, he asked, Yuan Weiqing, do you mean that we have to do what Deputy Hall Chief Zhang wants to do? Yuan Weiqing nodded. Of course, if Vice Hall Master Zhang can do it, why can't we? LV Hushan wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. Yuan Weiqing, the Shadow Alliance of South County is not to be trifled with. Vice Hall Master Zhang's martial arts are high, so he won't be afraid of them. But I'm afraid that the two of us can't beat them. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing sneered. LV Hushan, you're too muddle-headed. Even if this happened, who would know that it was done by the two of us? Let me tell you, when it's done, everything will be pushed to Vice Hall Master Zhang, and it will have nothing to do with us. Don't you think so? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he sneered and continued. LV Hushan, when the time comes, we don't have to bear the responsibility of this matter, but we can get the benefits of this matter. Don't you think it's perfect? Hearing this, a trace of greed flashed in LV Hushan's eyes. They were also present during the conversation just now. Vice Hall Master Zhang wanted 10 million gold coins to solve this problem. 10 million gold coins, how much was that? As long as LV Hushan thought about it, he felt his heart pounding, and he felt that he could not speak. If he could really get all these gold coins, he could use Tianhua to get the martial arts manual. At that time, if he could really cultivate the martial arts of the one-armed saber king, it would be a wonderful thing in the world. If he could really do this, there would be too many benefits. In the future, the Tanlei sect of South County would be the world of the two of them. He would be the hall master and Yuan Weiqing would be the vice hall master, enjoying the supreme power. There were also 10 million gold coins and the martial arts manual that he was about to get. Thinking of this, LV Hushan found that he could not wait. Thinking of this, LV Hushan hurriedly turned to look at Yuan Weiqing. Yuan Weiqing, how confident are you in this matter? Looking at LV Hushan's anxious appearance, Yuan Weiqing sneered, LV Hushan, to tell you the truth, I don't even have 10% confidence. What? LV Hushan was furious when he heard Yuan Weiqing's reply. However, he didn't dare to speak loudly and could only speak in a low voice. Yuan Weiqing, are you kidding me? Yuan Weiqing shook his head and sighed. LV Hushan, since I want to form an alliance with you, I naturally have to be frank. Do you want me to play tricks? Hearing this, LV Hushan was stunned. Although he knew that what Yuan Weiqing said was true, this was not the result he wanted. LV Hushan clenched his teeth. Yuan Weiqing, I hope you think about it carefully. Even if I don't do this, I won't lose anything. But you, on the other hand, I'm afraid you'll be killed by me. Speaking of this, LV Hushan sneered. Yuan Weiqing, so I advise you to be more clear-headed and think of a way quickly. As long as you think of a way, I can let you live. Do you understand? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing nodded. LV Hushan, I don't want to lie to you, so I'm telling you the truth. We don't have the confidence because Deputy Hall Master Zhang's martial arts is too high. Even if the two of us attack him at the same time, I'm afraid we won't be his opponent. That's why I said that we don't even have 10% confidence. Hearing this, LV Hushan sneered. Yuan Weiqing, in this case, I can't keep you alive anymore. After saying this, LV Hushan slowly raised his hand again and was about to attack Yuan Weiqing. Yuan Weiqing frowned. LV Hushan, you are too impatient. Am I wrong? Do I have to lie to you and say that the two of us can easily defeat Deputy Hall Master Zhang? Will that make you happy? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued. But if I say so, what if you let your guard down and think that you can succeed easily? Wouldn't that be terrible? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was suddenly shocked and suddenly came to his senses. Deputy Hall Master Zhang's martial arts were high, so he couldn't be careless. But now, he was really careless. He was a little dizzy because of the huge benefits. LV Hushan frowned and asked in a low voice, Yuan Weiqing, tell me, do you have a way? Yuan Weiqing turned his head and glanced at the unconscious Hall Master Shui in the distance. Then, he lowered his voice and asked, LV Hushan, tell me, do you have a way to wake Hall Master Shui up? As long as you can wake him up, I think that with the martial arts of the three of us, we should be able to defeat Deputy Hall Master Zhang. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan smiled bitterly and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, this is impossible. How can Deputy Hall Master Zhang allow me to wake Hall Master Shui up? If he finds out that we have this intention, I'm afraid that before we take action, he will kill us first. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing nodded. So, if we want to do it, we can only rely on the two of us. Am I right? LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, how can this be? If the two of us do it, I think that no matter what we do, we can't defeat Deputy Hall Master Zhang. Yuan Weiqing shook his head and sneered. LV Hushan, I don't think so. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was about to refute, but suddenly, he thought of something and asked quickly, Yuan Weiqing, do you have a good idea? Yuan Weiqing sighed. It's not a good idea. It's just a matter of luck. LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, tell me quickly. Let me listen to your idea and see if it works. Yuan Weiqing lowered his voice and said, LV Hushan, if we want to fight Deputy Hall Master Zhang, we can't rely on our martial arts. So, if we want to succeed, we can only use the Thunderbolt pill. Do you understand? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's idea, LV Hushan was a little disappointed and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, have you forgotten what happened just now? Let me tell you, even if the two of us use the Thunderbolt pill at the same time, we can't defeat Deputy Hall Master Zhang. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing remembered LV Hushan's betrayal and couldn't help but sneer. LV Hushan, it's because you know that it's impossible to succeed that you let me do it alone and watched me get seriously injured by Deputy Hall Master Zhang, right? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's complaint, LV Hushan's face turned red and he hurriedly shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, let's not talk about what happened just now. Since we have decided to form an alliance, it's not good for us to talk about it. Yuan Weiqing, let's talk about your good idea. This is the important thing. Yuan Weiqing said with a smile, LV Hushan, I have already said that we can only use the Thunderbolt pill to defeat Deputy Hall Master Zhang. LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, even if we use the Thunderbolt pill, do you really think that we can defeat Deputy Hall Master Zhang? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Of course not. We have to use some small tricks. Otherwise, we can't defeat him. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly nodded. Yuan Weiqing, at least you are not muddle-headed. Let me tell you the truth. The reason why I didn't make a move just now was because I knew that even if the two of us made a move, whether it was martial arts or the technique of throwing the Thunderbolt pill, we would not be his opponent. Yuan Weiqing nodded. So we have to choose a time when he's not on guard and suddenly ambush him. I think, even if his technique is brilliant, if he's not on guard, he definitely won't be able to dodge the Thunderbolt ball we throw at him. Don't you think so? Hearing this, LV Hushan hurriedly shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, how is this possible? How can he not be on guard against us? I'm afraid it's impossible for us to find such an opportunity. Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, you are wrong. As long as he is human, there will be times when he is not on guard. As long as we think about it, we can definitely find a time when he is not on guard. Hearing this, LV Hushan could not help but frown. Yuan Weiqing, I admit that you are right. Deputy Hall Master Zhang does have times when he is relaxed. However, who can guarantee when it will be? If he is not relaxed today, wouldn't it be terrible? Yuan Weiqing suddenly sneered. LV Hushan, how is this possible? People tend to be relaxed when they are happy. Now think about it. Why would Deputy Hall Master Zhang be happy? LV Hushan sneered. Of course, it is when he becomes the Hall Master. This is the time he dreams of. Yuan Weiqing nodded. LV Hushan, you're right. When he becomes the Hall Master, he will definitely slack off. Hearing this, LV Hushan suddenly became a little annoyed. Yuan Weiqing, you know that this is impossible. What's the use of mentioning it now? LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He sneered and continued to speak without caring for Yuan Weiqing. Yuan Weiqing, have you forgotten that if you don't think of a way quickly, you will be killed by me before Deputy Hall Master Zhang becomes the Hall Master? Do you understand? Hearing LV Hushan mention this matter, Yuan Weiqing was secretly angry. If it were not for LV Hushan, how could he fall into such a situation? Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing kept gnashing his teeth. Once today's matter was done, he would never let this hateful LV Hushan go. He must let him have a taste of what he had suffered. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing let out a sigh of relief, calmed down some of his anger, and said slowly, LV Hushan, we all know that Deputy Hall Master Zhang wants to be the Hall Master. Of course, to officially become the Hall Master, he has to go back and hold a ceremony. But before that, if we can directly call him Hall Master, do you think he will be happy? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan's eyes suddenly lit up, and he said with a smile, "It makes sense. If we call Deputy Hall Master Zhang Hall Master now, he will be very happy. And when he is happy, Jia Xin will definitely be at her lowest. We just have to seize the opportunity to make a move on her. He should not be able to escape from our means." Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing nodded and said with a smile, "LV Hushan, you see, isn't a very complicated matter easily solved? Don't you think so?" Hearing this, LV Hushan suddenly frowned. "Yuan Weiqing, are we going to make a move on Deputy Hall Master Zhang like this?" Yuan Weiqing nodded. "Of course, what else do you want?" LV Hushan stared at Yuan Weiqing tightly, and he was a little annoyed. "Yuan Weiqing, are we going to shout Hall Master Zhang's name and then immediately throw thunderbolt balls at him?" Yuan Weiqing nodded. "Yes, LV Hushan, do you think we can't do it?" Hearing that Yuan Weiqing really wanted to use this method to attack Deputy Hall Master Zhang, LV Hushan was suddenly shocked, and he asked in a trembling voice, "Yuan Weiqing, do you really think this method will succeed?" Yuan Weiqing nodded. "I think there is no problem. Although Deputy Hall Master Zhang's martial arts are strong, his weakness is also very obvious. As long as we shout Hall Master Zhang at the same time, he will definitely be overjoyed. At that time, his defense will definitely be at its lowest. As long as we make a move at that time, I think there should be no problem." Hearing this, LV Hushan was finally a little angry. "Yuan Weiqing, this won't work. I think this plan is too simple, and it will not succeed." Yuan Weiqing turned his head and looked at LV Hushan. He frowned and asked, "LV Hushan, why do you think this plan will not succeed?" Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued to speak. "LV Hushan, I think there should be no problem. Think about it, even if it is you, if I call Hall Master LV now, what will you think?" Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan remembered that Yuan Weiqing had just called him Hall Master LV. Although he knew it was fake, he was inexplicably excited. Seeing the joy in LV Hushan's eyes, Yuan Weiqing sneered in his heart, but the expression on his face did not change, and he was still smiling. "LV Hushan, you see, I am right. As long as I call you Hall Master LV, you will immediately be happy, and at that moment, you will definitely be most relaxed and least vigilant. As long as I make a move on you at that time, you will definitely not be on guard, right?" Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan hesitated for a moment, then slowly shook his head. "Yuan Weiqing, you are right. When you called me Hall Master LV Hushan just now, I was really happy, but if you make a move on me at that time, I will still be on guard." Chapter 806. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing smiled and waved his hand. "LV Hushan, if you are still on guard, then we can say something nice to make you let down your guard, right?" LV Hushan shook his head. "Yuan Weiqing, I don't think this method will succeed. I think there needs to be a better way. Don't you think so?" Yuan Weiqing frowned. "LV Hushan, do you have a better way?" LV Hushan nodded. "Yuan Weiqing, I'm thinking that you should go over there and admit your mistake. After that, you take the opportunity to attack him. I'll support you from the side. Under our sneak attack, Deputy Hall Chief Zhang will definitely be shocked." Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing asked with some doubts, "LV Hushan, isn't this the method you just said?" LV Hushan nodded. "Yes, this is indeed our method. I didn't attack just now, so it failed. But if I attack, I think there should be a possibility of success." Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly sneered. "LV Hushan, how is this possible? You saw the scene just now. Even if you are one more person, the two of us are definitely not Deputy Hall Chief Zhang's opponent. So this method definitely won't work." LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, you are wrong. I just said that you should attack suddenly because I want you to use martial arts. But now it is different. At that time, you will pretend to admit your mistake, and then when the two of you are very close to each other, you will immediately launch the Thunderbolt Ball attack. I think at such a close distance, even if Deputy Hall Chief Zhang wants to dodge, I'm afraid it won't be so easy. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. What's more, don't forget that there is still me. After you throw the Thunderbolt Ball, I will throw the Thunderbolt Ball. I believe that even if Deputy Hall Chief Zhang dodges your attack, he will definitely not be able to dodge my attack. Yuan Weiqing, so believe me, my plan will definitely succeed. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing lowered his head and thought carefully. He could not help but nod secretly in his heart. If they followed LV Hushan's method, it might really be possible to succeed. Most importantly, if he were to use this method, the chances of success would be much higher than if he were to use martial arts just now. No matter how powerful Vice Hall Master Zhang was, under the attack of the Thunderclap Pill, he would not be able to gain any advantage. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing secretly calculated in his heart. In his first attack, how many Thunderclap Pills could he throw out at once? The power of the Thunderclap Pill was enormous. Of course, the more he threw, the greater the power. This was because the more Thunderclap Pills there were, the larger the area they covered, and the more powerful the explosion would be. Everyone understood this, so they were all working hard to cultivate, wanting to throw out more Thunderbolt Pills at once. The power of the Thunderclap Pill was boundless. It was because of this that you couldn't grab a bunch of them and throw them all out. If you dared to do that, not only would the Thunderclap Pill not hit anyone else, the first person to be hit would be you. It was precisely because of this reason that if one wanted to throw more Thunderclap Pills, it would depend on one's technique. No matter how many Thunderclap Pills you threw, you could only throw 2 at most. If there were too many, the Thunderclap Pills would collide and explode. Therefore, in one attack, you could only throw out 2 Thunderclap Pills. If you wanted to throw more Thunderclap Pills, you had to have a brilliant technique and skillful technique. Hall Master Xue knew the Heavenly Star technique and could throw out a lot of Thunderclap Pills in the blink of an eye. Although Vice Hall Master Zhang didn't know when to throw it, his martial arts were excellent. The strength of his fingers was just right. In addition to his diligent practice, he could naturally throw out a lot of Thunderclap Pills. In contrast, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan were too far apart. If they threw out 2 Thunderclap Pills at once, they would be careful, not to mention skillful. According to the best situation, they should throw 1 at a time, which was the safest. Yuan Weiqing thought that if he threw out more Thunderclap Pills in his first attack, it would be more advantageous for the two of them. But the problem was that the Thunderclap Pills couldn't be thrown as many as you wanted, but it also depended on your ability. For this kind of sneak attack tactic, according to Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan's technique, throwing 1 Thunderclap Pill at a time was the best choice. If they threw more Thunderclap Pills, it would be easy to be flustered. Maybe the Thunderclap Pills in their hands would collide and explode before they were thrown out. That would be terrible. Although the Thunderclap Pill was very powerful, if there was only 1 Thunderclap Pill, if one's martial arts were good enough, he could naturally dodge it. Yuan Weiqing was worried about this point. Even if he launched a sneak attack, Vice Hall Master Zhang's martial arts were too good. If Vice Hall Master Zhang dodged his sneak attack, there would be no more chances. Moreover, even if LV Hushan joined in, it was useless because the two of them attacked from both sides. However, although they could block both sides, they couldn't block the upper and lower side. At that time, whether Vice Hall Master Zhang dodged upwards or directly lay on the ground, he could dodge their attacks. This was the worst part. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing turned to look at LV Hushan and sighed secretly. Now that both of them had lost an arm, their current situation was even more unfavorable for them. If both of their hands were intact, they could use both hands at the same time, and the power would naturally increase a little. However, this was just imagination. Both of their arms were broken, so every time they threw the thunderclap pill, they could only rely on one hand. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing sighed and felt a little regretful. He shouldn't have been so reckless just now and caused himself to be so seriously injured. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's sigh, LV Hushan frowned and asked doubtfully, "Yuan Weiqing, what's wrong with you? Do you think you're not confident?" Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing smiled bitterly and shook his head. "LV Hushan, I'm thinking that if both of us didn't lose an arm, how good would that be?" Hearing these words, LV Hushan finally remembered that he had already lost an arm. His heart went cold as he abruptly turned his head to look at the unconscious Yi Tianhua and gnashed his teeth in anger. If it wasn't for him, how could both of us be so seriously injured? After this matter is over, I must catch him and avenge us. Yuan Weiqing smiled bitterly and shook his head. LV Hushan, speaking of which, this matter doesn't seem to be his fault. If we didn't find trouble with him, how could he hurt us? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment, then he sighed. "I don't know what happened, but this actually happened today. It's really unexpected. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have come no matter what." Yuan Weiqing sighed. "If I knew that I would lose an arm, whoever came would be a fool." The two of them gritted their teeth in anger, but there was nothing they could do. Since things had come to this, they could only think of a way to solve the problem. LV Hushan turned to look at Vice Hall Master Zhang in the distance, then turned back to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked quickly, "Yuan Weiqing, tell me, how was the method just now? Will it work?" Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he continued. "Yuan Weiqing, let me tell you, this matter has to be done quickly. If Vice Hall Master Zhang discovers our purpose, then I can only say sorry, do you understand?" Yuan Weiqing nodded and said with a smile, "LV Hushan, although your method just now is feasible, I feel that with only the two of us, even if we use the Thunderbolt pill, I'm afraid that we may not be his opponent." LV Hushan frowned. "Yuan Weiqing, what do you think we should do? Do you have a better idea?" Yuan Weiqing sighed. "If Hall Master Shui can wake up, it should be foolproof." After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sighed. "Yuan Weiqing, what's the use of saying that? If we can wake Hall Master Shui up, it won't be so troublesome." Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he sneered and continued. "Yuan Weiqing, if the two of us succeed, there are actually benefits. At least when we attack Hall Master Shui, he probably won't wake up. Wouldn't that be a lot more convenient for us? Don't you think so?" Yuan Weiqing nodded slowly. "But, although that would be convenient, if we want to succeed now, I'm afraid it won't be so easy." Hearing this, LV Hushan frowned. "That's why I asked you to think about it carefully and see if you can come up with a good idea." Yuan Weiqing suddenly said, "LV Hushan, even if we can't wake Hall Master Shui up, can we wake Yi Tianhua up?" LV Hushan waved his hand impatiently. "Yuan Weiqing, Yi Tianhua has been beaten so badly. Even if we wake him up, I'm afraid it's useless." Yuan Weiqing shook his head. "LV Hushan, you're wrong. Yi Tianhua is indeed very miserable now, but his martial arts are still there. Even if he's seriously injured, his power is absolutely amazing." Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing turned to look at LV Hushan and suddenly sneered. He lowered his voice and said, "LV Hushan, did you forget that Yi Tianhua said just now that if he wanted, he could die together with Vice Hall Master Zhang? LV Hushan, if the two of them die together, it would save us a lot of trouble, don't you think so?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, He sighed in his heart and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, I know you're right, but Yi Tianhua has already been beaten unconscious. What's the point of saying all this? We have no way of waking him up. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing was a little disappointed. LV Hushan, is there really no way to wake Yi Tianhua up? LV Hushan nodded and said with a wry smile, Yuan Weiqing, to tell you the truth, I can only stay by your side now. If I dare to leave here and go somewhere else, Vice Hall Master Zhang will definitely find out. So for our safety, I can't go anywhere. Do you understand? Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, does this mean that we can only think of a way by ourselves? LV Hushan nodded. Yuan Weiqing, it's better to think of a way by yourself. It's useless to rely on others now. Yuan Weiqing frowned. LV Hushan, if that's the case, I think we should use the method we just talked about. What do you think? LV Hushan asked doubtfully, Yuan Weiqing, which method are you talking about? Your method or mine? Yuan Weiqing turned to look at LV Hushan and sighed. LV Hushan, between the two of us, whose method do you think has a higher success rate? LV Hushan frowned. Of course, my method has a higher success rate. After all, our martial arts are not high. If we want to rely on martial arts to win, it is definitely impossible. The only way is to use the Thunderbolt pill. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, I also know that my method is not brilliant, but your method has been used once. If you use it again, do you think it is possible to succeed? Hearing this, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment. He regretted it again. Why didn't he do it just now? If he did it just now, he might have succeeded. At this point, LV Hushan was also very clear that since the method had been used once, it would not be so easy to use it again. Yuan Weiqing let out a sigh. LV Hushan, do you have any other way? If you do, don't use this method. The success rate of this method is too low. I'm afraid that the moment we go there, we will be seen through by Deputy Hall Chief Zhang. That would be terrible. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head with a wry smile. Yuan Weiqing, except for that method, I really have no other way. What about you? Think quickly. What other good methods do you have? Yuan Weiqing frowned. LV Hushan, is my method not working? LV Hushan shook his head and said with a wry smile, Yuan Weiqing, do you think this matter can be done just by us calling Hall Master Zhang? I don't think it is possible. Deputy Hall Master Zhang will definitely not believe us. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing's heart suddenly moved. He hurriedly turned to look at LV Hushan and lowered his voice. LV Hushan, I suddenly remembered that Deputy Hall Master Zhang just asked us to attack Hall Master Shui. Do you still remember? LV Hushan nodded. Yuan Weiqing, do you want to attack Hall Master Shui now? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, what do you think if we take advantage of this opportunity to wake Hall Master Shui up? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan's eyes suddenly lit up. His eyes were full of joy. After a while, he lowered his voice and said, Yuan Weiqing, your method is good. Let's do it this way. We pretend to agree with Deputy Hall Master Zhang and say that we will kill Hall Master Shui for him. When we arrive in front of Hall Master Shui, we can take the opportunity to wake him up. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing nodded and said with a smile, LV Hushan, as long as we wake Hall Master Shui up, Deputy Hall Master Zhang will definitely be defeated by us. Chapter 807. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly sighed. Yuan Weiqing, I'm suddenly worried. What if Deputy Hall Chief Zhang asks me to kill you before he asks me to kill Hall Chief Shui? What should I do then? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was taken aback. Even his voice was trembling. LV Hushan, this won't work. If you kill me, who will help you? LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, I don't want to do this. I'm worried that Deputy Hall Chief Zhang will ask me to do this. I can't refuse him. What do you think I should do then? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly felt a chill in his heart. LV Hushan was right. If Deputy Hall Chief Zhang asked him to kill him, he wouldn't dare to disobey him. Because if he dared not to do it, Deputy Hall Chief Zhang would kill him in the next moment. Yuan Weiqing was sure that LV Hushan would definitely listen to Deputy Hall Chief Zhang and kill him in order to protect himself. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing's forehead suddenly broke out in cold sweat. He kept thinking of a way to solve this problem. LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, hurry up and think of a way. If you can't think of a way, all our plans will be in vain. I'm afraid I can only let you down first. Do you understand? Yuan Weiqing nodded in a panic, but he didn't say anything because he had nothing to say. As long as he couldn't think of a way, the most tragic result would happen. What should I do? Just as Yuan Weiqing was thinking of a way, Deputy Hall Chief Zhang in the distance must have become impatient. LV Hushan, what are you doing? Why don't you hurry up and do it? Hearing Deputy Hall Chief Zhang's words, LV Hushan was shocked. He hurriedly turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked in a low voice, Yuan Weiqing, hurry up and think of a way. If you can't think of a way, I'll have to do it. Yuan Weiqing was so scared that he took a few steps back. LV Hushan, don't be anxious. Let me think about it. Maybe there's a way? Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued to speak. LV Hushan, think about it. If our plan succeeds, how much benefits will you get, Hall Master LV? Hearing the three words, Hall Master Lu Hushan was first taken aback, then he was secretly delighted. Although these were just three simple words, why did it sound so comfortable? Hall Master Lu? When would he become the real Hall Master Lu? Lu Hushan's heart was filled with anticipation. He was looking forward to the day when he would become Hall Master Lu. Yuan Weiqing didn't care about what LV Hushan was thinking, because he was really thinking of a way. He knew very well that if he couldn't think of a good idea, then he was really done for this time. No one would be able to save him. Yuan Weiqing didn't want to die. He still wanted to live well. Perhaps one day, if his luck was good, he could also become Hall Master Yuan. Yuan Weiqing looked left and right. The two experts were still unconscious. It was almost impossible to rely on them. Who else could it be? Yuan Weiqing looked further away and found that the situation was the same. They were all unconscious. In the entire venue, there were only 3 awake people. Yuan Weiqing secretly looked at Vice Hall Master Zhang in the distance. He wondered what method he should use to kill Vice Hall Master Zhang. Vice Hall Master Zhang's martial arts were excellent. It was impossible to defeat him with martial arts. Even if the two of them joined forces when they were not injured, it was absolutely impossible for them to be Vice Hall Master Zhang's opponent, not to mention now that both of them only had one arm left. Therefore, it was absolutely impossible to solve this problem with martial arts. How to solve it? Thunderbolt Pill? Use Thunderbolt Pill to deal with Vice Hall Master Zhang? Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing couldn't help but shake his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang was not only good at martial arts, but his technique of throwing Thunderbolt Pill was also many times better than the two of them. If they wanted to compete with Vice Hall Master Zhang to see who could throw more and who could throw farther, then they would definitely lose. But besides these two methods, was there no other way? What should I do? Yuan Weiqing felt that his head was about to split, but he still couldn't think of any way. The fact was in front of him. Whether it was martial arts or Thunderbolt Pill, the two of them were absolutely no match for Vice Hall Master Zhang. LV Hushan was also a little anxious. Yuan Weiqing, think quickly. If you can't think of a way, I can only do it. Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, now that things have come to this, there is no other way. The two of us can only fight this once. If we succeed, the Tanlei sect in the South County will be ours in the future. Hearing this, LV Hushan asked in a trembling voice, Yuan Weiqing, what if we lose? Yuan Weiqing turned his head to look at LV Hushan and asked with a sneer, LV Hushan, what do you think? Although Yuan Weiqing did not answer him, in this situation, LV Hushan understood Yuan Weiqing's thoughts even if he didn't listen to him. If they succeeded, the benefits would be huge. If they failed, they would immediately be destroyed. Thinking of this, LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, we can't. The two of us are no match for Vice Hall Master Zhang. Even if we want to fight, we can't win. Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, I know. But even if there is a slim chance, we should still try, right? Hearing this, LV Hushan suddenly sneered. Yuan Weiqing, if you are willing to fight for that slim chance, then go ahead. Anyway, I won't go. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, you only have a slim chance, but I tell you, my chance is bigger. As long as I don't want to fight, I can still live well. Yuan Weiqing, I'm afraid you are very uncomfortable. If you can't think of a way, I'm afraid you will be killed by me. Isn't this feeling very painful? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth and hated in his heart. If LV Hushan hadn't framed him, he wouldn't have ended up like this. Seeing Yuan Weiqing gritting his teeth, LV Hushan suddenly sneered. Yuan Weiqing, do you hate me very much? Do you think I caused you to end up like this, right? Hearing this question, Yuan Weiqing was shocked and hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, how is this possible? Why would I hate you? I am now thinking of a way to get rid of Vice Hall Master Zhang. LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, in fact, you don't have to lie to me. I know what you are thinking. You must hate me. It's all because of me that you ended up like this, right? Speaking of this, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his words, he sneered and continued. Yuan Weiqing, let me tell you. If you hadn't framed me first, I wouldn't have harmed you. In the end, it's all your fault. If you hadn't framed me, none of this would have happened, and we wouldn't have ended up like this. Speaking of this, LV Hushan fiercely patted his body and said angrily, Yuan Weiqing, take a good look. When I came here, I didn't really fight. Of course, I wasn't injured. Except for being injured by Yi Tianhua just now, I basically didn't have any injuries. But now you see, where did all these injuries on my body come from? It's all because of you. If it weren't for you, I would only have an injury on one arm. Yuan Weiqing, speaking of which, you are 100 times more ruthless than me. If you hadn't done this to me, how could I have done this to you? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing glanced at the injuries on his body and hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, this is all in the past. Let's not talk about it anymore, okay? LV Hushan clenched his teeth. Yuan Weiqing, you're too ruthless. I thought you were my good friend, but in the end, you didn't show any mercy to me at all. It really makes me disappointed. Hearing this, even if Yuan Weiqing wanted to endure, he didn't want to and said in a low voice. LV Hushan, don't you know why I attacked you just now? If you didn't attack me in the woods, how could I attack you here? Speaking of which, it's all because of your arrogance. What does it have to do with me? LV Hushan asked. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was a little annoyed. Yuan Weiqing, do you mean that after you hit me, I should be grateful to you? Yuan Weiqing sneered. LV Hushan, there's no need to be grateful. I just want to tell you that if you hadn't hit me first, I wouldn't have hit you. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused, and then he slowly said, LV Hushan, speaking of which, we are still friends after all. Why should we hurt our friendship because of the past, don't you think so? After hearing these words, LV Hushan was angry. Just now, Yuan Weiqing was too ruthless. Now, as long as he breathed, he could feel the severe pain where Yuan Weiqing hit him. LV Hushan gritted his teeth. Yuan Weiqing, no matter what, you can't blame me for this. If you had agreed to my conditions, why would I hit you? Yuan Weiqing waved his hand. LV Hushan, don't you know why I didn't agree to your conditions? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, what I said was for your own good, but why didn't you listen? Yuan Weiqing sneered. LV Hushan, thank you very much. You gave me those conditions, do you think I should be grateful to you? LV Hushan nodded, of course. If you had listened to me, maybe you would have been fine now. Don't you think so? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing couldn't help but frown. He suddenly lowered his voice and asked, LV Hushan, I suddenly thought of a question. If we had done as Deputy Hall Master Zhang said from the beginning, do you think he would have fulfilled his conditions? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan nodded. Of course, he had promised us at the beginning, so he would definitely fulfill his promise. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, I used to think the same as you, but after what happened just now, I suddenly found that things are not what we thought. LV Hushan turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing, frowned and asked, Yuan Weiqing, do you mean that Deputy Hall Master Zhang didn't want to agree to our conditions? Yuan Weiqing nodded. Now that I think about it, it seems that it is really impossible. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan frowned and asked with some doubts. Yuan Weiqing, you didn't believe Deputy Hall Master Zhang at the beginning, but now you don't believe him? Yuan Weiqing let out a sigh. LV Hushan, I suddenly found that Deputy Hall President Zhang was just brushing us off since the beginning. Do you understand? LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, do you mean that Deputy Hall Master Zhang was lying to us from the beginning? Yuan Weiqing nodded. Didn't you find that Deputy Hall Master Zhang would agree to whatever conditions we put forward? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued. I suspect that he didn't want to agree from the beginning, so no matter what conditions we put forward, he would agree. Anyway, he wouldn't go on a trip. On the contrary, Hall Master Xue has been against it, because he knows that as long as he agrees, he will work hard to realize it. Hearing this, LV Hushan asked in a trembling voice, Yuan Weiqing, do you mean that if there is no accident, Hall Master Xue will help us practice martial arts when we go back? Yuan Weiqing nodded. Since Hall Master Xue is willing to agree to our conditions, he will work hard to fulfill them. On the contrary, Deputy Hall Master Zhang will agree to any conditions, which shows that he will not agree to anything. Hearing this, LV Hushan let out a sigh and said with a wry smile, Yuan Weiqing, what's the point of knowing this now? Deputy Hall Master Zhang's martial arts are too high, so we can only listen to him. If we dare to oppose, he will not mind killing us. LV Hushan turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and sighed. Yuan Weiqing, you'd better think of a way quickly. If you can't think of a way, when Deputy Hall Master Zhang brings it up again, I really can't refuse. Do you understand? Yuan Weiqing was also a little annoyed. LV Hushan, don't worry, I'm also thinking of a way. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued to speak. LV Hushan, I think there's no need to think about it. Just do it according to the method just now. I think our plan might succeed if we are caught off guard. LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, I can only see the failure of your stupid plan, and I can't see any shadow of success. Let me tell you, if you still use this stupid method to fool me, don't blame me for doing something to you. Hearing LV Hushan's threat, Yuan Weiqing sighed secretly in his heart. Chapter 808. Yuan Weiqing also came up with a good idea, but Deputy Hall Master Zhang was not so easy to deal with. After thinking for a long time, Yuan Weiqing raised his head and looked at LV Hushan. He gritted his teeth and said, LV Hushan, I'm also optimistic. If we rely on the strength of the two of us, it's absolutely impossible to defeat Deputy Hall Master Zhang. So, I think we have to cooperate with Hall Master Shui to succeed. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan frowned and said, Yuan Weiqing, I've already said that we can't wake Hall Master Shui up. It's too dangerous. If we arouse Deputy Hall Master Zhang's suspicion, it will be terrible. At that time, it won't be you who will be unlucky, but both of us. Do you understand? Yuan Weiqing sighed and said, But, if we don't cooperate with Hall Master Shui, it's really difficult to do it with just the two of us. LV Hushan gritted his teeth and snorted, Yuan Weiqing, I don't care. I'm telling you, if you can't think of a way, I can only follow Deputy Hall Master Zhang's order and kill you. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, to be honest, I don't want to destroy our friendship, so you'd better try your best to think of a way. Otherwise, I can't do anything. Yuan Weiqing sighed in his heart. He knew that LV Hushan was absolutely serious. If he really couldn't think of a way, LV Hushan might really follow Deputy Hall Master Zhang's order and kill him. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly said, LV Hushan, I'm serious. Let's wake Hall Master Shui up. As long as he wakes up, he will definitely be able to block Deputy Hall Master Zhang's attack. At that time, both of us will be really safe. LV Hushan shook his head and said with a sneer, Yuan Weiqing, I've already said that it's impossible. If we wake Hall Master Shui up, Deputy Hall Master Zhang will definitely be suspicious. Yuan Weiqing frowned and said, LV Hushan, can you think of a way to make Deputy Hall Master Zhang let us go without being suspicious? LV Hushan shook his head as he said, Yuan Weiqing, we can't do that. No matter what we do, Deputy Hall Chief Zhang will suspect us. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing frowned and probed, LV Hushan, could it be that we really don't have a way? LV Hushan spread out his hands and spoke with a bitter smile, Yuan Weiqing, if you have a way, then quickly tell me. I really don't have a way. Yuan Weiqing lowered his head and thought for a while before suddenly saying, LV Hushan, if you ask Vice Hall Master Zhang to let me kill Hall Master Shui, will he let us go? Hearing this, LV Hushan couldn't help but be stunned. He frowned, Yuan Weiqing, could it be that you want to kill Hall Master Shui? Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand, LV Hushan, how is that possible? I just want to find an opportunity to go there. Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued to speak. LV Hushan, Hall Master Shui is our last chance. If we kill him, we won't have another chance. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan nodded, Yuan Weiqing, you're right. Hall Master Shui is indeed an opportunity for us. However, you just attacked Deputy Hall Chief Zhang. I think he must be very angry. Even if you ask him to kill Hall Master Shui, I'm afraid he won't agree. Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, LV Hushan, how do you know if you don't try? Maybe Deputy Hall Chief Zhang will agree. Don't you think so? Hearing this, LV Hushan frowned, Yuan Weiqing, what do you mean? Even if you go there, can you wake Hall Master Shui up? Yuan Weiqing hesitated for a moment before nodding. He lowered his voice and said, LV Hushan, I have a life-saving pill. I think if Hall Master Shui takes it, he should be able to regain consciousness soon. LV Hushan looked at Yuan Weiqing with some doubts. Yuan Weiqing, do you have such a good thing? Yuan Weiqing nodded and sighed. If you don't have a good thing with you, how can you rest assured? Yuan Weiqing turned to look at LV Hushan and asked with a sneer, LV Hushan, I don't think you have it too, right? Hearing this, LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, I'm different from you. How can I have such a good thing? Yuan Weiqing frowned, LV Hushan, we're already allies. Why don't you trust me? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, it's not that I don't trust you. I really don't have it. Yuan Weiqing sighed and said slowly, LV Hushan, don't lie to me. Do you think I don't know you have it? LV Hushan broke out in a cold sweat and waved his hand. No, I really don't have it. I'm not lying to you. Yuan Weiqing turned to look at LV Hushan and sighed. LV Hushan, why do you have to do this? Let me tell you, you have such a good thing. I even know what it's called and what it's used for. LV Hushan, don't hide it from me. Even if you want to hide it, you can't. Why do you have to do this? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly froze and his face gradually became embarrassed. Yuan Weiqing, I don't have anything good. The things I brought are very ordinary. How can I have such a good thing? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, even if you lie to me, you can't hide it from me. Do you want me to tell you what you have? LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, let's not talk about this. Anyway, you have taken out your good thing. When the time comes, as long as Hall Master Shui eats it, there will be no problem. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing nodded. Since LV Hushan didn't want to talk about it, he couldn't talk about it anymore. Because now, the initiative was in LV Hushan's hands. Even if LV Hushan didn't deal with Deputy Hall Master Zhang, he could still survive. However, Yuan Weiqing couldn't. If he didn't come up with a good idea, he was afraid that he wouldn't exist after today. So, no matter what price he had to pay, he had to think of a way. Yuan Weiqing said with a smile, LV Hushan, take me there later. Then I'll let Hall Master Shui eat this medicine. This matter is half done. Hearing this, LV Hushan was about to nod, but he had some doubts in his heart. He hurriedly asked, Yuan Weiqing, can you tell me how long it will take for the medicine to take effect after you eat it? Speaking of this, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he added, Yuan Weiqing, what I mean is, after Hall Master Shui takes the medicine, how long will it take for him to wake up? Hearing this question, Yuan Weiqing was stunned. For a moment, he couldn't speak. His medicine was called the Super Life-Prolonging Pill. As long as he wasn't seriously injured, he could recover in a short period of time. The problem was that this medicine was too expensive. Although Yuan Weiqing bought this medicine, he was really reluctant to use it. It was precisely because of this reason that Yuan Weiqing wasn't sure how long it would take for the Super Life-Prolonging Pill to take effect. When he bought the medicine, the seller said that it would take effect in a short period of time. But the problem was, how long was a short period of time? An hour? An incense stick's time? Or a quarter of an hour? If it took that long for Hall Master Shui to wake up, Yuan Weiqing was sure that he and LV Hushan wouldn't be able to wait until then. However, this matter had to be done. Because if he didn't do it, it meant that he had no other way and LV Hushan would take action against him. This result wasn't what Yuan Weiqing wanted. If it was a normal time, he would definitely say it so that everyone would be mentally prepared. But if he said it at this time, Yuan Weiqing was sure that LV Hushan would definitely not agree to this plan. Because at this time, LV Hushan didn't want to take risk. Or rather, he didn't want to take a bigger risk. Yuan Weiqing was very clear that unless LV Hushan saw hope, she wouldn't agree. So, Yuan Weiqing sighed and prepared to give him confidence. LV Hushan, don't worry. This medicine will take effect in a short period of time. I think that after Hall Master Shui takes the Super Life-Prolonging Pill, she should be able to wake up soon. Speaking until here, Yuan Weiqing continued to encourage LV Hushan. LV Hushan, believe me. As long as you do as I say, there will be no problem. LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, is there really no problem? You won't lie to me, right? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. My medicine is called the Super Life-Prolonging Pill. As long as you hear the name, I believe you should be very clear about the efficacy of this medicine. So please believe me, I will never lie to you. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan nodded. Yuan Weiqing, if this medicine can wake Hall Master Shui up in a short period of time, our matter is really halfway to success. Yuan Weiqing nodded. As long as Hall Master Shui can wake up, Deputy Hall Master Zhang will definitely be no match for the three of us. Don't you think so? LV Hushan said with a smile, of course. Even if Deputy Hall Master Zhang's martial arts are excellent, Hall Master Shui is definitely not a weakling. If the two of them fight, it's really hard to say who will win in the end. Don't you think so? Yuan Weiqing nodded, of course. Hall Master Shui is originally very good at martial arts. In addition, he has rich combat experience. Even if he is no match for Deputy Hall Master Zhang, he will definitely not be defeated easily. At that time, as long as the two of us help from the side, we will definitely be able to kill Deputy Hall Master Zhang. Hearing this, LV Hushan smiled and nodded. Yuan Weiqing, he will rely on you for the next thing. The next thing? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was a little confused and asked slowly, LV Hushan, what are you talking about? LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, have you forgotten? Of course, it's about Hall Master Shui. When it's done, do you still want to keep Hall Master Shui and let him continue to be Hall Master? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly came to his senses. He hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, LV Hushan, how could I forget? I have always remembered. As long as the three of us join forces to get rid of Deputy Hall Master Zhang, it will be time for us to get rid of Hall Master Shui. Is that what you mean? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, LV Hushan nodded with satisfaction and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, when the time comes, we will rely on you to deal with Hall Master Shui. Yuan Weiqing immediately laughed. LV Hushan, don't worry. We saved Hall Master Shui. He definitely won't be wary of us. If we want to make a move, it'll be easy. We'll definitely succeed. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan nodded with satisfaction. On this point, LV Hushan was very relieved. Hall Master Shui was facing such a crisis. If the two of them saved him, he would definitely be very grateful. At that time, how could he be wary of the two of them? When they got rid of Deputy Hall Master Zhang, it would be the time for Hall Master Shui to be killed. As long as the two of them were killed, Yuan Weiqing and he would be the bosses of the Tanlei sect in the South County. Thinking that he might be the Hall Master of the Tanlei sect in the South County in the future, LV Hushan became excited again. He had never thought that he would have such a day. Ever since he came to the Tanlei sect in the South County, to be honest, LV Hushan was already quite satisfied to be the protector of the Tanlei sect in the South County. This was because he knew his ability very well. In terms of martial arts, he was not very good. In terms of intelligence, he was not the strongest. Therefore, he was already very satisfied to be a protector. But now, he actually had the opportunity to be the Hall Master of the Tanlei sect in the South County. This was simply like a dream. It could be said that if Yuan Weiqing had not mentioned this possibility, LV Hushan would definitely not be willing to take this risk. LV Hushan was a cautious person. He knew what to do and what not to do. He also knew that it was not that some dangerous things could not be done, but because the benefits were not big enough. Just like today's matter. Although it was very dangerous, LV Hushan felt that if he succeeded, the benefits would definitely be worth it. Yuan Weiqing looked at LV Hushan's smile and knew what he was thinking. He could not help but sneer in his heart. If he really got rid of Deputy Hall Master Zhang, according to the original plan, he would get rid of Hall Master Shui. However, Yuan Weiqing did not intend to do so because LV Hushan had already said that Hall Master Shui had the intention of promoting him. If Hall Master Shui survived, Yuan Weiqing could be the Deputy Hall Master. If he got rid of Hall Master Shui, he would still be the Deputy Hall Master. This was because LV Hushan wanted to be the Hall Master of the Tanlei sect in the South County, so he could only be the Deputy Hall Master. Since they were both Deputy Hall Masters, why would Yuan Weiqing take this risk? Hall Master Shui's martial arts were powerful. It was almost as difficult to get rid of him as it was to get rid of Deputy Hall Master Zhang. Therefore, Yuan Weiqing really did not want to take this risk. He wanted Hall Master Shui to stay and then kill LV Hushan. This was the best and safest way. Yuan Weiqing believed that as long as he told Hall Master Shui about this matter, Hall Master Shui would definitely get rid of him. Chapter 809. Yuan Weiqing knew that as long as he told Hall Master Shui that LV Hushan wanted to harm Hall Master Shui would definitely get rid of LV Hushan. After LV Hushan was killed, Hall Master Shui would be the Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County, and he would be the Vice Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County. Was there anything better than this in this world? Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing was secretly happy. Of course, he also knew very well that the biggest problem was not LV Hushan in front of him, but Vice Hall Master Zhang behind LV Hushan. As long as Vice Hall Master Zhang was killed, Yuan Weiqing knew that everything would develop according to his plan. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing sneered and looked at LV Hushan in front of him. LV Hushan, don't worry. As long as we wake up Hall Master Shui, Vice Hall Master Zhang will definitely not be able to withstand the joint attack of the three of us. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing sneered. At that time, you will become the Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County. How good would that be? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan nodded in satisfaction. The piety that was like a dream made him a little intoxicated. Yuan Weiqing, okay, we'll do as you say. At that time, as long as I become the Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County, I will definitely treat you well. You will definitely be the Vice Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South County. Yuan Weiqing said with a smile, LV Hushan, since the plan has been set, shall we start? Hearing this, LV Hushan was about to nod in agreement, but he suddenly frowned. Yuan Weiqing, although the general plan has been set, we still have to think clearly about how to implement it. Otherwise, if we fail because of a certain segment, the two of us will be in trouble. Yuan Weiqing felt the same way about LV Hushan's words and hurriedly nodded. Okay, let's discuss what to do. Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued to speak. LV Hushan, later, tell Vice Hall Master Zhang to let me kill Hall Master Shui. After he agrees, we will go and wake Hall Master Shui up together. LV Hushan, when Hall Master Shui is awakened, Deputy Hall Master Zhang will be killed. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's plan, LV Hushan was about to nod, but he suddenly frowned and asked with some doubts. Yuan Weiqing, although your plan is very good, the problem is, what if Vice Hall Master Zhang doesn't agree with me and insists that I kill you? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was shocked and hurriedly waved his hand. Just say that I'm ready to surrender. I believe that he will agree. LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, although you say that, what if he doesn't agree? What should we do then? Yuan Weiqing frowned and asked with a wry smile, LV Hushan, what do you think we should do? LV Hushan hesitated for a moment before slowly asking, Yuan Weiqing, do you have anything good that you can offer? Perhaps Deputy Hall Master Zhang will agree. Good stuff? Yuan Weiqing shook his head and said with a wry smile, LV Hushan, I don't have anything good. LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, if you don't have anything good, why would Deputy Hall Master Zhang let you go after you sneak attacked him? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly remembered that he had sneak attacked Deputy Hall Master Zhang just now. Cold sweat suddenly appeared on his forehead. LV Hushan, I really don't have anything good. What should I do? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, LV Hushan sighed and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, you have to think about it carefully. Don't forget that if I kill you, no matter how many good things you have, you won't be able to enjoy them. Do you understand? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned and said in a trembling voice, But, LV Hushan waved his hand, and without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to finish, he spoke in a low voice, Yuan Weiqing, you have to think about it clearly. Even if you take out something good now, as long as you kill Vice Hall Master Zhang, you can still take it back in the future. But if I kill you, you really won't have anything. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing hesitated. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, LV Hushan, in this case, I'll tell you the truth. I once got a mysterious heaven sword manual, but I practiced the saber, so this sword manual is not very useful to me. However, I read some of it. Although the saber and sword are not universal, I feel that my martial arts have improved a lot. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, I think you should forget about the sword manual. You have practiced according to the sword manual for so long, but your martial arts are still not good enough. In my opinion, the sword manual is really not that good. Don't take it out. Hearing that LV Hushan looked down on his sword manual, Yuan Weiqing was a little annoyed. LV Hushan, what do you know? This sword manual is very powerful. It is definitely not something ordinary. LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, we have to speak with fact. If you practice the sword technique in the sword manual, your martial arts will definitely be very high. Maybe Vice Hall Master Zhang will not be your opponent. But look at you. You keep saying that your sword manual is powerful, but in the end, I'm afraid you can't even take one move from Vice Hall Master Zhang. What is so powerful about this sword manual? Don't take it out and make a fool of yourself. Hearing that LV Hushan still didn't believe him, Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, LV Hushan, I'll tell you the truth. I can't understand that sword manual, so I can't practice it. LV Hushan, I'll tell you the truth. If I can understand the words in the sword manual, Vice Hall Master Zhang will definitely not be my opponent in less than a year. Do you believe me? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, since you can't understand it, how do you know that this sword manual is very powerful? Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, although I can't understand the words in the sword manual, this sword manual has a total of 49 pages, but there are only 9 moves in it. Yuan Weiqing turned his head and looked at LV Hushan. He sighed and slowly said, LV Hushan, do you know what this means? LV Hushan shook his head. I don't know. Yuan Weiqing slowly said, LV Hushan, this means that there are 7 pages for each move. Do you understand? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly froze, and then his heart was overwhelmed with shock. Each move actually needed 7 pages to describe. Didn't that mean that each move was very complicated? LV Hushan knew that his master also had a secret martial arts book, which meant that all the martial arts that he was taught were recorded in it. This secret martial arts book only had 7 pages, but it recorded 35 moves. This meant that there were 5 moves recorded on each page. Although each page recorded 5 moves, LV Hushan still felt that it was very complicated. Although LV Hushan's martial arts were not high enough, it did not mean that his sect's martial arts were not good enough. It was because his talent was not good, plus he did not work very hard. It was already very good that he could reach today's martial arts. LV Hushan was very clear that if he could learn all 35 moves, then his martial arts would definitely double. Yuan Weiqing's sword manual actually used 7 pages to describe each move. What did this mean? LV Hushan turned his head and looked at Yuan Weiqing. He asked in surprise, Yuan Weiqing, is what you said true? Each move actually has 7 pages? Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, you are right. Each move does have 7 pages. LV Hushan gritted his teeth. Yuan Weiqing, is it because the words written on it are very big? Maybe there are only a dozen words on each page? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, this is impossible. The words on this sword manual are not only not big, but also smaller than normal words. Not only are the words small, but they are also densely written. There is almost no space on the page. Hearing this, LV Hushan suddenly gasped. Yuan Weiqing, you are not lying to me? Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, I have not had this sword manual for a long time. I originally wanted to find someone to help me translate the words on it and then abandon the saber to learn the sword. But who would have thought that such a thing would happen? Really unlucky. LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, you have been practicing for more than 20 years. If you give up now and start practicing again, isn't it a bit late? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing suddenly sneered. LV Hushan, to tell you the truth, as long as the words on the sword manual are translated, even if I start practicing again, I can guarantee that after a year, my martial arts will certainly improve. I dare not say that I will be able to beat Deputy Hall Leader Zhang, but I can be sure that I will be able to surpass my current self. So powerful? LV Hushan was shocked and asked in a trembling voice, Yuan Weiqing, can the martial arts on the sword manual really be so powerful? Yuan Weiqing nodded. LV Hushan, what I just said is actually only the first move. I am afraid that I may not even be able to master the first move within a year. Do you understand? LV Hushan looked at Yuan Weiqing in surprise. Yuan Weiqing, do you mean that you can surpass your current martial arts with just an incomplete sword skill? Yuan Weiqing turned his head to look at LV Hushan and asked with a wry smile, LV Hushan, how is my martial arts? Hearing this question, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment and then said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, your martial arts are not good now because your arm is crippled. But before that, your martial arts were very good. At least in the Secret Thunder sect of the South County, you can be ranked in the top 5. Yuan Weiqing looked at LV Hushan and asked with a smile, LV Hushan, before that, how was I compared to you? LV Hushan was a little embarrassed, but he still replied, Yuan Weiqing, I am not as good as you. Yuan Weiqing nodded and said with a sneer, LV Hushan, I can guarantee that before my arm was crippled, you probably couldn't even take 20 moves from me, right? Hearing this, LV Hushan was a little annoyed. Yuan Weiqing, I admit that my martial arts are not as good as yours. But if you say that I can't even take 20 moves, I am afraid that is impossible, right? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, this is absolutely true. If you were my enemy, I might be able to defeat you in less than 20 moves. LV Hushan was annoyed by Yuan Weiqing's low praise. Yuan Weiqing, I don't believe it. How can I not even take 20 moves from you? Yuan Weiqing turned to look at LV Hushan and said with a sneer, LV Hushan, let's not talk about other things. Let's talk about Snow Leopard. Are you a match for Snow Leopard? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment and then said, Yuan Weiqing, I should be able to tie with Snow Leopard. Yuan Weiqing suddenly sneered. LV Hushan, you think too highly of yourself. If you can tie with Snow Leopard, then isn't Snow Leopard too weak? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued to speak. LV Hushan, to tell you the truth, with your martial arts, as long as you meet Snow Leopard, you will never be able to come back. Do you believe it? LV Hushan was so angry that the veins on his forehead were popping out. I don't believe it. Yuan Weiqing, you are talking nonsense. Even if I can't defeat Snow Leopard will never kill me so easily. Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, why don't you understand? Snow Leopard's speed is very fast. If you are not its opponent, then you will never be able to escape from its vicious claws. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment. He turned to look at LV Hushan and sighed. LV Hushan, your martial arts is not focused on agility. If you meet Snow Leopard, who is known for its speed, think about it. Do you think you can escape? Hearing this, LV Hushan clenched his teeth. Yuan Weiqing, I don't believe it. Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, even if you don't believe me, there is nothing I can do. There is no Snow Leopard here for you to experiment on. But I can be sure that as long as you meet Snow Leopard, you will never be able to escape. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing's heart suddenly moved. He lowered his voice and asked, LV Hushan, I suddenly remembered. Since your martial arts are so low, why did you have to complete the task of killing the snow leopards in the back mountain when you were chosen as the protector? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued. LV Hushan, you should also know that if you want to become the protector of Nanjun Tanlei sect, you don't have to complete the task of Snow Leopard. There are other tasks to choose from. But the question is, why did you choose this task? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was shocked. Suddenly, a chill rose from the bottom of his heart. Yuan Weiqing was right. Although LV Hushan did not admit it, he knew very well that with his martial arts, he was definitely no match for Snow Leopard. What Yuan Weiqing said was even more right. Snow Leopard was known for its speed. With his speed, if he could not defeat Snow Leopard, then even if he wanted to escape, he would not have the chance to. Since he could not escape, wouldn't he be killed by Snow Leopard at the back of the mountain? Thinking of this, LV Hushan felt a chill all over his body. Cold sweat also appeared on his forehead. Chapter 8:10. Looking at LV Hushan, who was standing there with his eyes darting around, Yuan Weiqing lowered his voice and asked, LV Hushan, have you thought it through? Who asked you to complete this task? LV Hushan's heart was in a mess, but there was a thought in his heart that kept circling in his mind. Someone was trying to harm him. Otherwise, why would he be asked to complete such a difficult task? LV Hushan's eyes kept darting around as he thought quickly. Who was it? After thinking for a long time, LV Hushan did not get any answer. Helplessly, he turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked in a low voice, Yuan Weiqing, do you know who did this? Glancing at LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing sneered and asked, LV Hushan, do you believe my words this time? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan sighed and nodded slowly. Yuan Weiqing, this matter is indeed suspicious. Do you know anything? Yuan Weiqing shook his head and sneered. LV Hushan, since someone wanted to do this, they naturally would not let others know. How could outsiders like us get the news? LV Hushan clenched his fist and waved it hard. He said angrily, Who is it? Who wants to harm me? Yuan Weiqing suddenly whispered, LV Hushan, do you really think that someone wants to harm you? Hearing this, LV Hushan suddenly turned to look at Yuan Weiqing. Yuan Weiqing, isn't this what you said? You said that someone wants to harm me, so you asked me to deal with the snow leopard in the back mountain. Isn't that right? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, this is just a guess. I didn't say that it was possible. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued. LV Hushan, maybe you're just letting your imagination run wild and it's not true? LV Hushan shook his head and said with a wry smile, Yuan Weiqing, you don't understand. You don't know anything. Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused, gritted his teeth and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, I'll tell you the truth. My martial arts are indeed not as good as the snow leopard. If I met the snow leopard, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to come back. So, after hearing what you said just now, I also feel that something is wrong. Speaking of this, LV Hushan turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked tentatively, Yuan Weiqing, do you think someone really wants to harm me? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was also stunned. When he said those words just now, it was actually just a joke. He didn't think in this direction. Yuan Weiqing frowned and thought about it carefully. He was shocked to find that there was such a possibility, and the possibility was not small. Although Yuan Weiqing wasn't very clear about LV Hushan's martial arts, he knew that it was very low. He could even guess that LV Hushan's martial arts were definitely not as good as Snow Leopard's. His guess just now was just a spur of the moment. Could it be that someone really wanted to harm LV Hushan? Yuan Weiqing was a little puzzled. He turned to look at LV Hushan and asked tentatively, LV Hushan, could it be that you've offended someone? LV Hushan shook his head with a wry smile. How would I know? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing frowned. LV Hushan, do you mean that you've offended someone? LV Hushan sighed and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, you also know that in our line of work, how can we not offend people? Just like the bandit leader, Boss LV. Can we not offend him? If we don't offend him, we won't be able to complete the mission. What do you think we should do? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing sighed. He naturally understood what LV Hushan meant. He also knew that some people had to be offended. This was unavoidable. LV Hushan, think about it carefully. We're not talking about people other than the Tanlei sect in the South County. They can't do such a thing. What you need to think about now is the people of the Tanlei sect in the South County. Have they offended anyone? Tanlei sect in the South County? LV Hushan lowered his head and thought for a moment. He sighed. Yuan Weiqing, with our current status, how can we not offend people? Now that I think about it carefully, we've offended a lot of people. I'm afraid that I'm not the only one who has offended people. Over the years, you've probably offended a lot of people too, right? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing sighed in his heart. LV Hushan was right. Over the years, the two protectors had really offended a lot of people. Of course, the two hall masters of the Tanlei sect in the South County would not offend people. Then, the matter of offending people would naturally be offended by their protectors. It was precisely because of this reason that Yuan Weiqing thought about it. It seemed that, over the years, they had really offended a lot of people. LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, could it be that you think they want to harm me? Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, this is all after you became a protector. I'm talking about the past. Before you became a protector, did you offend anyone? Hearing this, LV Hushan shook his head. If it was before I became a protector, I don't think so. At this point, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he continued to speak. No, even if Yuan Weiqing offended someone before he became a protector, how could they harm me with those people? And even if they wanted to harm me, how could they have the ability to use this method to harm me? Yuan Weiqing, don't you think so? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing nodded and said slowly, LV Hushan, you're right. Even if you offended someone in the past, you only offended some disciples of the Tanlei sect in the South County. Even if they wanted to harm you, they definitely wouldn't have the ability to do such a thing. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused, then he slowly said, But, who is it? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's painting, LV Hushan pondered for a moment. Suddenly, a chill rose from the bottom of his heart, and he asked in a trembling voice. Yuan Weiqing, could it be that the person who wants to harm me is Hall Master Shui? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing was also shocked, and his voice trembled. LV Hushan, how is this possible? Hall Master Shui asked you to be a protector. How could he harm you? LV Hushan shook his head with a bitter smile. Yuan Weiqing, think about it carefully. The test to be a protector is an order from the Hall Master. If this order was not given by Hall Master Shui, how could anyone else have the qualifications to give this order? Don't you think so? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was also stunned. After a while, he asked in a trembling voice, "LV Hushan, could it be that Hall Master Shui really wants to harm you?" LV Hushan sighed. "Yuan Weiqing, now it seems that it's very likely because this order was given by Hall Master Shui. Think about it, no one else can change it. Therefore, it's very likely that Hall Master Shui did all this." Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing frowned. "LV Hushan, if that's the case, why did Hall Master Shui promote you to be the protector of the secret Thunder Sect in the South County? If he wanted to harm you, he could have just not promoted you. Why did he have to put in so much effort?" Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan frowned and was puzzled. "Yuan Weiqing, you're right. Since Hall Master Shui wants to harm me, he shouldn't promote me to be the protector of the secret Thunder Sect in the South County, right?" Yuan Weiqing frowned and said, "Could it be that there's some inside story?" At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, he continued without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question. "LV Hushan, could it be that before you joined the secret Thunder Sect in the South County, you had some grudges with Hall Master Shui?" LV Hushan shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "No, before I joined the secret Thunder Sect in the South County, I had never seen Hall Master Shui. How could I have any grudges with him?" Yuan Weiqing frowned even more and asked in confusion, "LV Hushan, think about it carefully. Did anyone in your previous generation have any grudges with Hall Master Shui?" Hearing this, LV Hushan lowered his head and thought for a moment before shaking his head. "I don't think so. In my previous generation, although they were all people who knew martial arts, they had nothing to do with the secret Thunder Sect in the South County. How could there be any grudges?" Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. "LV Hushan, that's not necessarily the case. Even if your previous generation had nothing to do with the secret Thunder Sect in the South County, it doesn't mean that there is no grudge." At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment before slowly saying, "For example, the bandit leader, Boss LV, also has nothing to do with the secret Thunder Sect in the South County. However, doesn't he also have a grudge with us? Don't you think so? LV Hushan, quickly think about it. Did someone in your previous generation offend Hall Master Shui? Is that why Hall Master Shui wants to harm you?" Hearing this, LV Hushan was shocked. He hurriedly lowered his head and thought carefully again. However, he still could not find anyone in the previous generation of his family who might have anything to do with Hall Master Shui. LV Hushan sighed. "Yuan Weiqing, I really can't think of anything. Why is that?" Yuan Weiqing frowned. "LV Hushan, can't you think of anything?" LV Hushan smiled bitterly and shook his head. "No, absolutely not." At this point, LV Hushan suddenly thought of something and hurriedly said, "Yuan Weiqing, that's not right. If the people in the previous generation of my family have any connections or grudges with Hall Master Shui, why didn't the people in the previous generation of my family object when I joined the Tanlei sect in South County? Yuan Weiqing, if there was really a grudge between them, they would definitely object when I joined the secret Thunder Sect in the South County. Don't you think so?" After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned. Just as he was about to nod, he thought of something and said with a wry smile, "LV Hushan, that's not necessarily the case. If the older generation of your family doesn't know that Hall Master Shui is a member of the Tanlei sect in South County, they won't object when you join the Tanlei sect in South County." Hearing this, LV Hushan nodded and sighed. "Yuan Weiqing, what you said might be right." Hearing that LV Hushan agreed with his statement, Yuan Weiqing immediately said, "LV Hushan, perhaps the previous generation of your family offended Hall Master Shui, and they didn't know that Hall Master Shui was from the secret Thunder Sect in the South County. Therefore, when you joined the secret Thunder sect in the South County, they didn't object. When you came to the secret Thunder sect in the South County, Hall Master Shwe didn't know about you, so you could live safely. However, when Hall Master Shwe wanted to promote you to be a protector, he saw you and recognized you immediately. Therefore, he used his authority as a Hall Master to ask you to go to the back of the mountain to deal with the snow leopard. Hall Master Shwe knew that your martial arts couldn't deal with the snow leopard, but he still asked you to deal with it. This is enough to show that his real goal is not to let you be a protector, but to harm you. LV Hushan turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and gritted his teeth. Yuan Weiqing, since Hall Master Shwe doesn't want me to be a protector, he should have just rejected it. Why did he do this? Yuan Weiqing sighed and said slowly, maybe Hall Master Shwe has already spread the news and can't take it back, so he wants to use the snow leopard to kill you. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's analysis, LV Hushan let out a sigh. Yuan Weiqing, since Hall Master Shwe doesn't want me to be a protector, even if I become a protector, he can remove me from my position. Speaking of this, LV Hushan suddenly frowned. Yuan Weiqing, since I became a protector, if what you said is true, Hall Master Shwe has a grudge with the previous generation of my family, then he should have dealt with me. But why didn't he deal with me? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was also a little puzzled. LV Hushan, you're right. Why didn't Hall Master Shwe do that? LV Hushan said with a bitter smile. Yuan Weiqing, to be honest, Hall Master Shwe is really good to me. Just like what you said just now, every time he asked me to complete a task, it sounds very complicated, but it's really very simple to do. Also, like the gold coins last time, I left so many gold coins, but Hall Master Shwe never mentioned it. On the contrary, if it was someone else who did this, I'm afraid Hall Master Shwe would have dealt with him long ago. Yuan Weiqing, according to what you said just now, Hall Master Shwe should have taken the opportunity to deal with me. Why would he let me go? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was even more puzzled. He shook his head with a bitter smile. LV Hushan, to be honest, I really don't know why he did this. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued. LV Hushan, to be honest, over the years, you've made a lot of mistakes. If you have a grudge with Hall Master Shwe, it would be very easy for him to deal with you based on your mistakes. But why didn't he do that? Is there a problem? Chapter 8:11. LV Hushan smiled bitterly and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, how would I know? If I knew, I wouldn't be here thinking about it. Yuan Weiqing frowned. But don't you want to know why? LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, why don't you tell me? Yuan Weiqing nodded and said slowly, LV Hushan, think about it. The only person who can give you the order to go to the back of the mountain should be the Hall Master. The intention of this order is obvious. He wants you to be defeated by Snow Leopard. Your martial arts are so low. As long as you are defeated, the chances of you coming back are almost too slim. Therefore, the order for you to go to the back of the mountain is to kill you. Yuan Weiqing turned to look at LV Hushan and asked with a sneer, LV Hushan, am I right about this? LV Hushan nodded and said with a bitter smile, yes, that should be the case. Yuan Weiqing continued, logically speaking, this order should be given by Hall Master Shwe because only Hall Master Shwe can decide the mission of the test. According to this inference, Hall Master Shwe should want to kill you. However, ever since you successfully became the protector of the secret Thunder sect in the South County, Hall Master Shwe did not continue to attack you. This is the most suspicious thing, don't you think so? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sighed. You're right. If Hall Master Shwe really wants to harm me, he should continue to act. But why didn't he target me? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly said, LV Hushan, I guess this should be the reason. Maybe Hall Master Shui thought that he had a grudge with you and wanted to harm you. However, after you became a protector, you realized that there was no grudge between you, so he didn't continue to attack you. LV Hushan, in my opinion, this should be the only possibility. Don't you think so? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan asked with some doubts, Yuan Weiqing, what grudge do I have with Hall Master Shui? Yuan Weiqing nodded. LV Hushan, although I don't know what grudge you have with Hall Master Shui, the only thing I'm sure of is that the grudge between you two should be very serious. If it was just a small grudge, he wouldn't have ordered you to go to the back of the mountain. LV Hushan, think carefully. Have you ever offended Hall Master Shui? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan shook his head and said with a wry smile, Yuan Weiqing, before I became a protector, I didn't even see Hall Master Shui. How could I have any enmity with him? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. No, there must be. Otherwise, why would Hall Master Shui hate you so much? Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued to speak. LV Hushan, think about it carefully. Maybe you did something unintentionally when you were completing some tasks, and this unintentionally made you hate Hall Master Shui. Isn't this also possible? Hearing this, LV Hushan frowned and lowered his head to think carefully. Then, he shook his head with a wry smile. Yuan Weiqing, this is impossible. Before I became a protector, I was always led by someone else when I went on a mission. I was only assisting from the side. Even if there was enmity, Hall Master Shui shouldn't hate me. He should hate the person who led the team, right? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing nodded. LV Hushan, what you said makes sense. If there was a problem, it would be the problem of the leader. It has nothing to do with you. But what is the reason for this? Why does Hall Master Shui hate you so much? Yuan Weiqing turned his head to look at LV Hushan and asked slowly, LV Hushan, think about it carefully. When you were all on a mission together, did you do anything that made Hall Master Shui unhappy when you were alone? LV Hushan frowned and thought for a while. Just as he was about to shake his head, his heart suddenly moved. He looked up at Yuan Weiqing and asked tentatively, Yuan Weiqing, what do you think would cause Hall Master Shui's dissatisfaction? Yuan Weiqing shook his head with a wry smile. LV Hushan, how would I know? Think about it carefully. Even if you were on a mission together, there should be times when you acted alone. I suspect that you did something when you were on your own that caused Hall Master Shui to be dissatisfied with you. Hearing this, LV Hushan frowned. After a while, he said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, if we were talking about acting alone and causing trouble, I'm afraid I'm not the only one. Even you must have done something like this, right? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. Then, he waved his hand. LV Hushan, of course. Even if we were on a mission together, there would be times when we were separated. It's just that maybe when we were on a mission, we didn't do anything that made Hall Master Shui unhappy, so we were all fine. Only you might have done something that made Hall Master Shui unhappy. LV Hushan, think carefully. What happened? Why is there a connection between these two things? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question again, LV Hushan gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, Yuan Weiqing, in fact, there was one time when I acted alone, and the target turned out to be a relative of Hall Master Shui. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing immediately nodded and said with a sneer, LV Hushan, this should be right. It must be because of this matter that caused Hall Master Shui to be dissatisfied, making him hate you and want to use this opportunity to get rid of you. Yuan Weiqing turned his head to look at LV Hushan and asked tentatively, LV Hushan, then tell me, what happened that made Hall Master Shui unhappy? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan sighed and said slowly, in fact, you can't blame me for this matter. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame Hall Master Shui's relative. Yuan Weiqing frowned. LV Hushan, tell me what happened. I'll analyze it for you. LV Hushan nodded. Yuan Weiqing, you should still remember that 5 years ago we went on a mission. There were a total of 5 people in a group, and I was one of them. This mission was actually very simple. The 5 of us were to deliver 30 Thunderbolt pills to the house of a person surnamed Wang. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned. LV Hushan, could it be that this person surnamed Wang is Hall Master Shue's relative? LV Hushan shook his head and said with a wry smile, how is this possible? Yuan Weiqing, listen to me. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, the place where Wang lives is very far from our secret Thunder sect in the South County. We walked for 2 days before we arrived at his place. The person surnamed Wang is the owner of a villa. His name is Wang Haishan, and the name of the villa is Yumei Villa. He can be considered a famous figure in the area. He bought these Thunderbolt pills to protect the safety of his villa. After 2 days of traveling, we arrived at Yumei Villa. Wang Haishan is very hospitable. Originally, after we delivered the Thunderbolt pills, we would return the way we came. However, he insisted on letting us stay for a night. He would only let us leave after we were treated as the host. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned. Could it be that Wang Haishan has some bad intentions? LV Hushan waved his hand and said with a wry smile, how could that be? Didn't I just say that Wang Haishan is very hospitable? He only let us stay because he treats us as friends. LV Hushan turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with a smile, Wang Haishan is really a good person. The banquet he entertained us was very sumptuous. We were all very satisfied. Yuan Weiqing, don't forget that at that time, I was not the protector of the secret Thunder sect in the South County, and the leader of our team was only a small captain. Wang Haishan was willing to entertain a few small figures like us and prepared so carefully. He can be considered a very good person. Yuan Weiqing frowned. LV Hushan, according to what you said, everyone is good. Isn't it good? Is there a problem? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan nodded with a wry smile. Yuan Weiqing, you're right. If it was just Wang Haishan, then the delivery of the goods this time would definitely be perfect. Wang Haishan was very satisfied with the goods, and we were also very satisfied with Wang Haishan's hospitality. It should have been a perfect ending, but Hall Master Shue's relatives appeared and disrupted this perfect ending. Hearing that Hall Master Shue's relatives appeared, Yuan Weiqing immediately perked up and hurriedly asked, LV Hushan, after Hall Master Shue's relatives came, why did they disrupt this perfect ending? LV Hushan sighed and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, originally Wang Haishan was very satisfied with our goods and the people who were transporting the goods. However, a distant relative of Hall Master Shui somehow heard the news and rushed to Yumei Villa. Hall Master Shue's relative is called Shuelyuzi, and his family is near Yumei Villa. In the past, because of Hall Master Shue's relationship, Wang Haishan respected him a little, so he often came here to have a good meal. Wang Haishan has a big family and business, so he doesn't care about this, so he let him come and go freely. LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He let out a sigh and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, logically speaking, Shuelyuzi is Hall Master Shue's relative, so he should speak on behalf of the secret Thunder sect in the South region. Don't you think so? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing nodded. Of course. I think everyone knows about the matter of not helping outsiders, right? LV Hushan sighed and said with a wry smile, Yuan Weiqing, we all know, but Shuelyuzi doesn't. After Shuelyuzi came to Yumei Villa, Wang Haishan asked him to come to the table to drink with us. At first, everything was normal, but after he drank 3 glasses of wine, everything changed. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing could not help but frown and asked tentatively, LV Hushan, Could it be that Xuelyuzi began to speak ill of the secret thunder sect in the south region? LV Hushan shook his head with a wry smile. Yuan Weiqing, although Xuelyuzi's words are not bad, they are definitely not good. Yuan Weiqing was a little curious and asked, LV Hushan, then quickly tell me, what did Xuelyuzi say? LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, you also know that the thunderbolt pills made by the secret thunder sect in the south region are complicated and powerful. It's definitely a rare good thing, right? Yuan Weiqing nodded. Of course. So many people who have used the thunderbolt pills say that it's good. How can it not be good? LV Hushan smiled bitterly. Yuan Weiqing, it's precisely because the process of making the thunderbolt pills is complicated and requires a lot of materials that we sell them to the outside world. Each thunderbolt pill is sold for 50 gold coins. It shouldn't be much, right? Yuan Weiqing nodded. Although 50 gold coins is not a small amount, compared to the fact that the thunderbolt pills can really save one's life at a critical moment, 50 gold coins is definitely not much. At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, he did not wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and asked with some doubt. LV Hushan, could it be that Xuelyuzi thinks that the price of the thunderbolt pills is high? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan nodded and said slowly, this time, Wang Haishan bought 30 thunderbolt pills, which is quite a lot. In addition, it's his first time buying, so we lowered the price by 5 gold coins, so each thunderbolt pill is only sold for 45 gold coins. In this way, the original price of 30 thunderbolt pills is 1,500 gold coins, but after subtracting 5 gold coins, it becomes 1,350 gold coins. It's precisely because of this reason that Wang Haishan is very satisfied with us. However, after Xuelyuzi drank 3 glasses of wine, he began to talk nonsense. He said that 45 gold coins for the thunderclap pill is too expensive. It should be 5 gold coins. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing immediately frowned and said with some displeasure, LV Hushan, how can Xuelyuzi say such nonsense? Even if it's the production cost, 5 gold coins is far from enough. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head with a wry smile. Yuan Weiqing, you don't know, but Xuelyuzi is still talking nonsense. He said that the thunderbolt pills are only made of some broken stones, and we can still make a profit at 5 gold coins. Now that he's selling them for 45 gold coins, he's obviously looking down on us. He also said that Wang Haishan didn't ask him to buy the thunderbolt pills. If he did, he would definitely be able to buy them for 5 gold coins. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was a little annoyed. This Xuelyuzi is really not a good person? LV Hushan nodded. That's right. He's a relative of Hall Master Xue, but he actually said such words. It's really too embarrassing. Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth. LV Hushan, what should we do next? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan shook his head with a wry smile. What else can we do? Wang Haishan heard that he was fooled, so he wants a refund. Chapter 8:12. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned and said with a sneer, LV Hushan, 6 Xue was so arrogant. Didn't you say anything? LV Hushan sighed. Of course we did. However, Wang Haishan didn't believe us. He insisted on returning those thunderbolt pills and said that he would never buy our things again. Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He also said that unless these thunderbolt pills were sold to him for 3 gold coins, not only would he no longer buy our thunderbolt pills, but he would also tell everyone about this matter, and let everyone know that our thunderbolt pills were actually only sold for 5 gold coins. Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth. This 6 Xue is really not a good person. He even cheated his own relatives. LV Hushan nodded with a bitter smile. That's right. This sixth Shui is really not a good person. If it weren't for him, what happened that day would have been perfect. LV Hushan turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing, sighed and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, do you know that Wang Haishan isn't someone who lacks money? Needless to say, a thunderbolt pill was only sold for 50 gold coins. Even if it was sold for 500 gold coins, Wang Haishan could still afford it. The most important thing is that Wang Haishan can't stand this. Someone else spent 5 gold coins to buy something, and then he spent 50 gold coins to buy it. Wouldn't that be a waste of money? It was precisely because of this reason that Wang Haishan decisively returned the goods. The most embarrassing thing was that we were only halfway through the banquet before we were driven away by Wang Haishan. Speaking of this, LV Hushan sighed a few times. Yuan Weiqing, do you know what is embarrassing? That was really embarrassing. The goods we sent were returned, and then we were driven away from the table halfway through the meal. This was simply embarrassing. Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He sighed and continued. Yuan Weiqing, although Wang Haishan drove us away, to be honest, I don't hate him because according to his thoughts, we should have deceived him first. We should be the ones who let him down. If Sixth Shui was a good person and what he said was true, and we were indeed bad people, then I would accept it. However, that wasn't the case. Needless to say, a thunderbolt pill was only sold for 5 gold coins. Even if it was 10 gold coins, I'm afraid that our Tanthunder sect in the south region would buy it, right? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing nodded and said with a sneer, he said, the cost of thunderbolt pills is definitely above 10 gold coins. It's impossible for it to be 5 gold coins. That's not realistic. I'm afraid. It's not even the materials. LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, to be honest, I really don't know why Xuelyuzi said that the thunderbolt ball is only worth 5 gold coins. Hushan Hushan S. Why did he? Hushan why? Say why did why? Hushan shook his head with a wry smile. Yuan Weiqing, don't be anxious. Listen to me. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, after the 5 of us were driven out of Yumei Villa by Wang Haishan, we were naturally unwilling. Then we waited halfway. Only when the sky was about to turn dark did we see Xuelyuzi return. Sixth Shui was already drunk. If it weren't for the 2 servants of Yumei Villa supporting him, he probably wouldn't have been able to walk. When Xuelyuzi walked over, we stopped him and asked him why he said that. Yuan Weiqing's eyes lit up and he hurriedly asked, yes, why did he say that? LV Hushan shook his head with a wry smile. Yuan Weiqing, at first, Xuelyuzi refused to say. I was so angry that I gave him a few slaps. This time, he was honest and said that what he said was nonsense. After hearing Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned and asked with some doubt, is he not responsible for what he says? Can he speak nonsense as he pleases? Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, he said that when he drank too much, he would speak nonsense. Everyone knew about this and no one blamed him. Moreover, he asked us why we should blame him. He just drank too much and casually said it. Why should we take it seriously? In the end, he pointed at my nose and loudly berated me. Then, he said that he would tell Hall Master Shui about this and let him deal with me. Yuan Weiqing, at that time I was young and impetuous. How could I not take it? When I saw him pointing at my nose, the anger in my heart was ignited. I raised my fist and beat him violently. Everyone was also angry at Sixth Shui. They secretly kicked him or hit him with their hands. Anyway, they were all sneak attack. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing clapped his hands and sneered. Hushan, this kind of stupid thing deserves to be beaten. If it were me, I wouldn't let him go. No matter what, I would break his legs. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, you're right. I did do that. Not only did I break his legs, but I also broke one of his arms. It can be considered as relieving the hatred in my heart." Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth and nodded. When dealing with this kind of thing, you absolutely can't be soft-hearted. You must beat him hard so that he will be honest. Hu Shan nodded. Yes, I did beat Sixth Shui very badly. Later, I heard from a few people that Sixth Shui seemed to have really gone to the secret Thunder sect in the south region to look for Hall Master Shui. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing frowned. Since Sixth Shui went to look for Hall Master Shui, then Hall Master Shui would definitely look for you. Hu Shan smiled bitterly and shook his head. No, although Sixth Shui went to look for Hall Master Shui didn't look for me. On the other hand, when I saw that Sixth Shui went to the secret Thunder sect in the south region to look for Hall Master Shui, I was still worried. I took the initiative to look for Hall Master Shui and told him about this matter. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly asked, Hu Shan, after you told him about this matter, did Hall Master Shui reprimand you? Hu Shan shook his head and sighed. No, not only did Hall Master Shui not reprimand me, he even praised me and said that I did the right thing. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing frowned and asked in confusion, how is that possible? Sixth Shui is Hall Master Shui's relative. They both have the same surname, so they should be very close. How can you be fine? Hu Shan shook his head. But I'm fine. Hall Master Shui didn't look for trouble with me. Nothing happened. Hearing Hu Shan's painting, Yuan Weiqing was a little puzzled. He frowned and thought for a while before suddenly asking, Hu Shan, think about it carefully. After this incident, what happened? Did Hall Master Shui really not look for trouble with you? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hu Shan frowned and thought for a while. After a while, he slowly said, Yuan Weiqing, I remember now. It seems that not long after this incident, Hall Master Shui announced that he would promote me to be the protector of the secret Thunder sect in the South County. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly clapped his hands and said with a sneer, Hu Shan, that's right. Although Hall Master Shui didn't say anything on the surface, he still hates you. Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hu Shan to answer his question and continued to speak. Hu Shan, think about it. What happened when you were announced to be the protector of the secret Thunder sect in the South region? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, Hu Shan frowned and thought about it carefully. He shook his head with a wry smile. Yuan Weiqing, it seems that nothing happened. Everything was normal. After I passed the test, I successfully became the protector of the secret Thunder sect in the South region. There were no other problems? Speaking of this, Hu Shan suddenly frowned. He raised his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked in confusion, Yuan Weiqing, are you talking about the test? Yuan Weiqing nodded and said with a sneer, Hu Shan, I feel that this matter is not that simple. Think about it. There are so many people in the secret Thunder sect in the South region. Why did he suddenly promote you to be the protector of the secret Thunder sect in the South region? Hearing this, LV Hu Shan frowned and muttered to himself, That's right, why is that? Yuan Weiqing sighed, Hu Shan, in terms of martial arts, you are not the strongest. In terms of wisdom, you are not necessarily higher than them. In terms of seniority, you are not early. However, among so many disciples, why did Hall Master Shui promote you to be the protector of the secret Thunder sect in the South region? Hu Shan, do you really not think there is a problem? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Hu Shan sighed and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, I understand what you said. In all aspects there are indeed many people stronger than me. Let's not talk about others. Just our team leader's martial arts is much stronger than mine. Otherwise, he would not have become our team leader. After hearing Hu Shan's words, Yuan Weiqing nodded. Hu Shan, you are talking about Li Lei, right? Hu Shan nodded, that's right. Our team leader is Li Lei. His martial arts are very good. Maybe his martial arts are better than mine. Hearing Hu Shan's answer, Yuan Weiqing suddenly sneered. Hu Shan, you said that your martial arts might be better than yours. At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Hu Shan to answer his question, he continued with a cold snort. Hu Shan, let me tell you, Li Lei's martial arts are very high. He is almost on par with me. In terms of martial arts, you are definitely not his opponent. Therefore, I think that the reason why Hall Master Shui promoted you to be the protector of the secret Thunder sect in the South region is definitely not because of your martial arts, but because of other problems? Other problems? Hu Shan turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked with some doubt, Yuan Weiqing, then why do you think Hall Master Shui chose the Hall Master of the secret Thunder sect in the South region? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. I don't know about that. The only thing I can be sure of is that the person promoted by Hall Master Shui is definitely not because of martial arts. This is because in the secret Thunder sect in the South region, as far as I know, there are at least 4 or 5 people who are stronger than you in martial arts. Therefore, it is definitely not because of your high martial arts that he promoted you to be the protector of the secret Thunder sect in the South region. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, although Hu Shan admitted that what he said made sense, he still blushed when Yuan Weiqing said that his martial arts were low. Hu Shan waved his hand awkwardly. Yuan Weiqing, let's not talk about that. Then think about it. Why did Hall Master Shui promote me to be the Hall Master? Yuan Weiqing frowned and turned to look at Hu Shan. He asked with a sneer, Hu Shan, this question is actually very simple. You just need to think about it carefully. In which aspect are you stronger than others? Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hu Shan to answer his question and continued to speak. Of course, it can't be very little. It has to be a lot. At least among everyone, as long as Hall Master Shui thinks of this aspect. He can only think of you. Yuan Weiqing turned to look at Hu Shan and asked with a smile, Hu Shan, think about it carefully. In which aspect are you stronger than others? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Hu Shan could not help but frown. He lowered his head and thought carefully. After a while, he did not raise his head to speak. Seeing LV Hu Shan lowering his head in silence, Yuan Weiqing suddenly sneered and slowly said, LV Hu Shan, you can't figure it out, right? I guess so. Because according to my observation, you're not much better than others in any aspect, so don't think about it. Hearing this, Hu Shan suddenly became angry. He suddenly reached out and grabbed Yuan Weiqing. He growled, Yuan Weiqing, do you want me to kill you now? Yuan Weiqing was startled by Hu Shan's tight grip. He hurriedly waved his hand and his voice was trembling. No, no, Hu Shan, let go of me. Thinking that he still needed Yuan Weiqing, Hu Shan gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, Yuan Weiqing, watch your words. If you dare to provoke me again, don't blame me for being rude. Do you understand? Yuan Weiqing hurriedly nodded and then said, Hu Shan, I didn't provoke you. What I said just now was just an analysis of the real situation. Can't I do that? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Hu Shan was stunned for a moment and then shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, don't say that sentence. Don't make me angry. Do you understand? Yuan Weiqing nodded. Okay, then I won't say it. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's promise, Hu Shan gently put him down. Yuan Weiqing, remember what you said. Don't provoke me. Yuan Weiqing hated Hu Shan in his heart. If he still had his martial arts now, he would definitely beat him up first. However, now that his martial arts were not as good as his, he could only endure for the time being. After the plan succeeded, it would be time for Hu Shan to be unlucky. When Yuan Weiqing thought of this, he suddenly felt a lot better. Chapter 8:13. Yuan Weiqing turned to look at LV Hu Shan and asked tentatively, LV Hu Shan, think about it carefully. Which aspect are you better at? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words this time, LV Hushan felt much better. It seemed that if he wanted to make this guy listen to him, he had to rely on his own fists. Otherwise, he might say something embarrassing. Yuan Weiqing, I can't think of anything. Have you thought of anything? Yuan Weiqing frowned. LV Hushan, since you can't think of anything, I think you should stop thinking about it. Now you should think about how to deal with Deputy Hall Master Zhang. This is the most important thing. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. No, I must know what is going on. LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He sneered and continued to speak without caring for Yuan Weiqing. I want to know who wants to harm me. If I can't find out, I will feel uncomfortable. Yuan Weiqing frowned. At this moment, he really didn't want to think about these problems anymore. As long as he woke up Hall Master Shui and got rid of Vice Hall Master Zhang, Yuan Weiqing believed that Hall Master Shui would definitely get rid of LV Hushan without any hesitation. As long as Hall Master Shui killed LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing wouldn't care who wanted to harm LV Hushan. LV Hushan, you have to think clearly. Which thing is more important? Don't ruin the big picture. LV Hushan shook his head and sneered. Yuan Weiqing, to tell you the truth, I think this is the most important thing. If I can't find out who wants to harm me, how can I do the next thing with peace of mind? LV Hushan still had something to say because he had some doubts. Could the person who wanted to harm him be Hall Master Shui? If the person who wanted to harm him was really Hall Master Shui, then LV Hushan had to think carefully about waking Hall Master Shui up. Because if Hall Master Shui really did all this, then even if he woke him up, he was afraid that in the end, he would still harm him. Wouldn't that be causing trouble for him? Therefore, LV Hushan had to find the answer to this question. Otherwise, he would never feel at ease. LV Hushan turned to look at Yuan Weiqing, who was frowning, and asked unhappily, Yuan Weiqing, are you not willing to help me think about these things? Looking at LV Hushan's cold eyes, Yuan Weiqing was startled. He hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, LV Hushan, how is this possible? We are now in the same camp. If you are in trouble, isn't it equivalent to me being in trouble? How can I not be willing? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, LV Hushan nodded with satisfaction. He was really satisfied. Before this, every time he saw Yuan Weiqing, he would respectfully take the initiative to say a few polite words. Because Yuan Weiqing's martial arts were higher than his, he had no choice but to lower his head. But now it was different. Now that his martial arts were higher than Yuan Weiqing's, Yuan Weiqing had to lower his head to him. This feeling was really good. Therefore, LV Hushan had secretly made up his mind that after this matter was successful, he must always maintain this attitude and make Yuan Weiqing lower his head in front of him forever. LV Hushan had already thought about it. If he wanted to maintain this attitude, there were only two ways. One was to work hard to improve his martial arts. As long as his martial arts surpassed Yuan Weiqing's, then Yuan Weiqing would always have this kind of respectful attitude. The second way was to cripple Yuan Weiqing so that his martial arts were still inferior to his. At that time, would Yuan Weiqing dare to not be respectful? Thinking of this, LV Hushan's heart was incomparably comfortable. He kept thinking in his heart. Which of these two options should he choose? Yuan Weiqing, since you are willing to help me think, then quickly think about what is going on. Who wants to harm me? Yuan Weiqing secretly gritted his teeth in his heart, but his expression was still full of joy. LV Hushan, now that we have analyzed it from the beginning, I believe we can figure out this matter. Hearing this, LV Hushan nodded and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, then tell me from the beginning. Yuan Weiqing said slowly, LV Hushan, from the beginning, how did you come to the secret thunder sect of the South County? LV Hushan frowned. Of course, when the secret thunder sect of the South County was recruiting people, I came. Yuan Weiqing nodded. This means that you didn't rely on anyone to come to the secret thunder sect of the South County, right? LV Hushan nodded. You're right. Before I came to the secret thunder sect of the South County, I wasn't familiar with the people there. Yuan Weiqing said slowly, LV Hushan, this means that before you came, you didn't have a grudge with anyone. Because you didn't know anyone, how could you have a grudge? Therefore, the trouble you caused must have been caused after you came to the secret thunder sect of the South County. LV Hushan nodded. I think so. I only got to know the people of the secret thunder sect of the South County later. Yuan Weiqing turned to look at LV Hushan and asked solemnly, LV Hushan, tell me the truth. Before what you said just now, did you do such a thing? LV Hushan was stunned for a moment and asked tentatively, Yuan Weiqing, do you want to ask if there's anything else that implicates Hall Master Shui, right? Yuan Weiqing nodded. Yes, I just want to ask if you've done anything to let Hall Master Shui down. LV Hushan frowned and lowered his head to think carefully. Then, he slowly shook his head. I don't think so. Although there were some things that didn't go smoothly, they were all completed. Only the thing I said just now was not completed, and I was even chased back. It was really embarrassing. Yuan Weiqing nodded. This means that the reason for the problem is still that matter. Don't you think so? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan nodded. Yuan Weiqing, I also think so. Before this event, everything that I did didn't seem to have anything to do with head Shui. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing sighed and said slowly, LV Hushan, if that's the case, it means that although Hall Master Shui didn't blame you on the surface, Sixth Shui is his relative after all. Therefore, he wanted to harm you secretly. You won't deny this, right? Hearing this, LV Hushan frowned. But, as I said just now, after that matter, Hall Master Shui didn't pursue the matter. Instead, he wanted to promote me to be the protector of the secret thunder sect of the South County. What's going on? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, don't forget that although Hall Master Shui wants to promote you to be the protector of the secret thunder sect of the South County, the test he arranged for you is already very obvious. He wants the snow leopard at the back of the mountain to kill you. Don't you understand? Hearing this, LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, although that's the case, when I went to the back of the mountain, I didn't see the snow leopard. Could it be that someone helped me? Yuan Weiqing nodded. LV Hushan, you don't have to think too much about this. If what you said is true, then someone must have helped you. Otherwise, with your martial arts, after going to the back of the mountain, not only would you not be able to get the spirit stones back, but you would also be killed by the snow leopard. At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued. LV Hushan, the question is, who is helping you? Now that we have decided, the person who wants to harm you must be Hall Master Shui, but who is the person who helped you? Also, why would he help you? Yuan Weiqing turned his head to look at LV Hushan and asked with a frown, LV Hushan, think about it carefully. Ever since you became a protector, has anyone used this matter to ask for benefits from you? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, I don't know anything. I only know that after I went to the back of the mountain, I really didn't see anything, so I was able to safely take the spirit stones back. As for whether anyone came to ask for benefits after that, I can tell you with certainty that no one came to ask for benefits from me. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned. LV Hushan, since no one asked for benefits from you, why would he help you? Don't you have any doubts in your heart? LV Hushan smiled bitterly and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, to be honest, I also had doubts, but no matter how I thought about it, I couldn't think of the answer to this question. After a long time, I stopped thinking about it. Yuan Weiqing sighed and said slowly, If someone wants to help you, unless he is your close relative, he must want to get benefits from you. Otherwise, why would he help you? Don't you think so? Hearing this, LV Hushan waved his hand. But no one came to ask for benefits from me? Yuan Weiqing nodded. Is this the strange part of the question? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued. LV Hushan, a person who is willing to help you but doesn't want benefits, do you think this person is your relative? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing's eyes suddenly lit up. He turned to look at LV Hushan and asked with a smile, LV Hushan, think about it, did your father see that you were in trouble and rushed over to help you? What? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was shocked. He said with a trembling voice, Yuan Weiqing, what are you talking about? How is this possible? Yuan Weiqing frowned. LV Hushan, if it's not your father, is it your relative? Otherwise, why would they help you? LV Hushan waved his hand impatiently. Yuan Weiqing, don't talk nonsense. Anyway, I'm telling you, this is impossible. My relatives won't help me. You'd better think of other possibilities. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was a little puzzled and asked tentatively, LV Hushan, why is this impossible? I think it's very possible. Your relatives heard that you were in trouble and rushed over to help. Isn't this a normal thing? LV Hushan waved his hand impatiently. Yuan Weiqing, I have already said that this is impossible. You'd better not think about these things. Yuan Weiqing was a little puzzled. LV Hushan, this matter is very likely. Why don't you think about it carefully? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused, and then he slowly said, LV Hushan, in fact, it's very simple to think about it. The snow leopard is very powerful. You just need to think, among your relatives, which one of them is better than the snow leopard, then this person is very likely to be the one who helped you. Don't you think so? LV Hushan turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with some displeasure, Yuan Weiqing, I have already said that you don't have to think about my relatives. It can't be them. When Yuan Weiqing heard this, he couldn't help but sigh. LV Hushan, think about it carefully. Besides your relatives, how can anyone else help you? LV Hushan smiled bitterly and shook his head. He turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and suddenly said, Yuan Weiqing, let me tell you the truth. Among my relatives, none of them knows martial arts. How can they help me? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was suddenly stunned, and then he asked with some doubts, LV Hushan, didn't you say that your relatives are very powerful? And you also said that among your relatives you are the weakest in martial arts. So I think that since their martial arts are better than yours, maybe one of them can help you. Don't you think so? LV Hushan was a little annoyed. Yuan Weiqing, I have already said that it's not them. Don't you understand? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, but think about it carefully. Your relatives are the most likely to help you. After all, you are relatives. Isn't it normal for them to help you when they see you? LV Hushan turned to stare at Yuan Weiqing and said angrily, Yuan Weiqing, didn't you hear me? If I say it's impossible, it's impossible. Do you understand? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing suddenly came to a realization and asked in a trembling voice, could it be that your relatives really don't know martial arts, and you lied to us when you said that they were very good at martial arts? LV Hushan was annoyed in his heart. He grabbed Yuan Weiqing and growled, Yuan Weiqing, I have already said, don't mention this matter again. Didn't you hear me? Do you want me to teach you a lesson before you are willing to listen? Seeing LV Hushan angry, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, don't be angry. I was just guessing. If you don't want to listen, I won't mention it again. Let me go. LV Hushan fiercely let go of Yuan Weiqing. Yuan Weiqing, remember, I said that it's not my relatives who helped me. Don't mention this again, understand? Yuan Weiqing wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and hurriedly nodded. Okay, I will listen to you. LV Hushan, since you don't want to talk about your relatives, then let's not talk about it. Is that okay? Chapter 8:14. LV Hushan snorted coldly. Yuan Weiqing, I don't want to hear this again. Remember, I don't want to say it a second time. Yuan Weiqing hurriedly nodded. Don't worry, I won't say it again. LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, continue what you said just now. What new discoveries do you have? Yuan Weiqing was annoyed, but he could only accept his fate since he was weaker. LV Hushan, I'm sure that someone must have helped you when you didn't meet the snow leopard in the back mountain. As for the person who helped you, I think it must be someone else if it's not your relative. LV Hushan turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with a sneer, Yuan Weiqing, of course it's someone else. Do you still need me to say it? Yuan Weiqing wished he could grab LV Hushan and slap him flat. However, he knew very well that if he dared to make a move, he would be the one who would be slapped flat. Therefore, Yuan Weiqing could only endure LV Hushan's bad temper. LV Hushan, first of all, we have to think about it. That's the back mountain of the Tanlei sect in the South County. How can ordinary people go there? Besides, even if outsiders want to go, the people of the Tanlei sect in the South County won't let them go. At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, he continued without waiting for LV Hushan to answer him. So I think that the person who helped you is very likely to be from the Tanlei sect in the South County. Yuan Weiqing turned to look at LV Hushan and asked tentatively, LV Hushan, think about it carefully. Before you became the protector of the Tanlei sect in the South County, who was your friend? And this person's martial arts were very high, enough to deal with the snow leopard. I believe it shouldn't be difficult to guess, right? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan frowned. He lowered his head and thought carefully. After a while, he slowly shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, although there are people with high martial arts, why would they help me? Logically speaking, they should be promoted to protectors because of their high martial arts. However, Hall Master Shui didn't promote them. Instead, he promoted me, who was weaker in martial arts. If I'm in trouble, it's already good enough that they don't kick me when I'm down. Why would they help me? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing suddenly sneered. LV Hushan, is there no one who will help you? LV Hushan shook his head and said, I don't think so. I still remember that when I was announced to participate in the protector selection, many people looked at me with envy and jealousy. So I'm sure they won't help me? Yuan Weiqing frowned. LV Hushan, maybe it's really them. You've been in Tanlei sect in South Commandery for 3 years before you became a protector. Don't you have any good friends in these 3 years? Hearing this question, LV Hushan frowned. After pondering for a moment, he slowly shook his head. I don't think so. What? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing immediately exclaimed, LV Hushan, don't tell me that you don't have a single friend after being in the secret Thunder sect for 3 years. LV Hushan hesitated for a moment before nodding. That's right. I usually drink with many people, but I'm afraid I don't have a single friend. Yuan Weiqing looked at LV Hushan blankly. After a while, he said with a wry smile, LV Hushan, I really didn't expect that you don't have a single friend after 3 years. It's really a pity. LV Hushan turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and suddenly sneered. Yuan Weiqing, don't tell me that it's a pity that you don't have a friend for 3 years? Yuan Weiqing sighed and said slowly, LV Hushan, there are so many disciples in the secret Thunder sect in South Commandery. Everyone is of similar age. Why don't you have a single friend? LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, don't tell me that having no friends has something to do with this matter? Yuan Weiqing nodded. Of course. If you have a friend and his martial arts is high enough, maybe your friend is secretly helping you in this matter. Do you think it's possible? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, don't worry. It's absolutely impossible. Yuan Weiqing frowned and thought for a while before saying slowly, LV Hushan, I think you're wrong. It's impossible. Think about it. Maybe some people you don't think are your friends are actually your friends. It is these friends who helped you in the dark and helped you get through this difficult time. LV Hushan, think about it carefully. It's definitely impossible. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan frowned and lowered his head to think carefully. Then, he shook his head with a wry smile. Yuan Weiqing, I can't remember. Maybe no one helped me. I think you'd better think of other possibilities quickly. Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, this is already the most likely thing. Besides your friends, do you think others will have the time to help you? LV Hushan turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and suddenly sneered. Yuan Weiqing, why not? Isn't someone helping me? Yuan Weiqing shook his head and sneered. LV Hushan, this is impossible. If you don't have friends, why would anyone help you? At this point, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued. LV Hushan, you have to know that the snow leopard is very powerful, especially its attack speed. It's almost impossible to guard against. It's like lightning constantly flashing around you. If your martial arts are poor, you won't be able to dodge the lightning-like attack. Most importantly, even if your martial arts are better than the snow leopard, when you face the snow leopard, there will be a certain degree of danger. The snow leopard's speed is fast. As long as your mind is slightly off, it's very likely that the snow leopard will seize the opportunity to kill you. It's also because of this reason that most people don't want to provoke the snow leopard. It will bring trouble to you. Do you understand? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, do you think that this must be my friend's doing? Yuan Weiqing nodded. It must be. If it was someone else, they definitely wouldn't take the risk to help you do this. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan frowned and lowered his head to think. When he raised his head again, his face was full of bitterness. Yuan Weiqing, I really can't remember. I've already said that I don't have any friends. No one will help me. Someone must be helping me. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, I've already said that some friends you can't usually see. Only at a critical moment, they will stand up to help you. LV Hushan, think about it carefully. What kind of person could do this? LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, I really can't remember. I don't remember having such a good friend. Yuan Weiqing lowered his head and thought for a moment. Then, he slowly said, LV Hushan, think about it. Who usually treats you the best? Best to me? Hearing this question, LV Hushan shook his head with a bitter smile. No, Yuan Weiqing, I don't remember anyone who is especially good to me. Speaking of this, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he sneered and continued. Yuan Weiqing, I only remember who is the worst to me. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing frowned. If you don't feel who is the best to you, maybe that person is not very willing to talk, or he is more introverted and not good at expressing himself. You can think about it again. Who around you is such a person? Not good at expressing himself. LV Hushan lowered his head and thought for a moment. Then, he shook his head with a bitter smile. Yuan Weiqing, there must be such a person. However, such a person is often bullied by us. How could he help me? LV Hushan turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked with a sneer, Yuan Weiqing, if I bully you every day, once I encounter difficulties, will you help me? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing sneered in his heart. When he was about to answer, his heart suddenly moved. He hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, LV Hushan, there should be. Think about it carefully. Is there such a person? LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, if such a person is counted, then there is really one. I don't know if it is him. Oh! Yuan Weiqing turned his head and looked. LV Hushan asked with some surprise. LV Hushan, is there really such a person? LV Hushan nodded. There really is. Yuan Weiqing hurriedly asked, LV Hushan, then tell me quickly. Who is this person? When he asked this sentence, Yuan Weiqing kept guessing in his heart. Who is this person? LV Hushan hesitated for a moment, then slowly shook his head and said with a bitter smile, Yuan Weiqing, I think it's better not to say. I don't think it is him. Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, if you don't say it, how do you know if it is him? If it is really him who has been helping you, but you don't know, then wouldn't you be sorry for his kindness? LV Hushan shook his head. It's better not. Yuan Weiqing, think about other people. This person shouldn't be him. Yuan Weiqing frowned and asked with a sneer, LV Hushan, you want me to help you investigate this matter, but you hide everything from me. Then how do you want me to investigate it? I think we should not waste time. Let's not investigate this matter. What do you think? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan frowned and hesitated for a moment. Then he slowly said, Well, since you want to know, then I will tell you who this person is. Speaking of this, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he continued. Yuan Weiqing, you should know this person, right? Yuan Weiqing was a little confused. LV Hushan, tell me quickly. Who is this person I know? LV Hushan gritted his teeth and said slowly, This person is Old Zhang, the cleaner of our Tanlei sect in the South Commandery? What, Old Zhang? Yuan Weiqing stared blankly at LV Hushan. After a long while, he asked in a trembling voice, LV Hushan, is the Old Zhang you mentioned the one who cleaned the latrine for us? LV Hushan blushed slightly and nodded. Yuan Weiqing, this person should be very suitable for what you said. Yuan Weiqing held back his laughter and nodded. LV Hushan, then tell me, why does he meet the conditions I said? LV Hushan gritted his teeth and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, think about it. You just said that this person doesn't want to talk, so Old Zhang doesn't want to talk, right? I'm afraid he can't say a word for a whole day. It should be suitable for this. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing nodded. You're right. Although Old Zhang is not a person who doesn't want to talk, no one talks to him. Naturally, he has nothing to say. He can't talk to himself, right? In short, it is suitable for this. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing was mocking him, LV Hushan was displeased, but he still suppressed his anger and continued. Yuan Weiqing, the other condition you mentioned is that even if he is bullied by others, he will not speak. Look, Old Zhang also meets this condition. I think the disciples of the Tanlei sect in the South Commandery have bullied him, right? Yuan Weiqing nodded again. Yes, everyone has bullied Old Zhang. This is also suitable. LV Hushan suddenly sneered. The most important thing is that Old Zhang's martial arts are definitely better than ours. Do you believe it? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing immediately shook his head without hesitation. LV Hushan, how is this possible? How can Old Zhang's martial arts be better than ours? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for LV Hushan to answer him. LV Hushan, if Old Zhang's martial arts are better than ours, why didn't he fight back when everyone bullied him? So I think he can't beat everyone, so he didn't dare to fight back. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head and sneered. Yuan Weiqing, you're wrong this time. I can assure you that Old Zhang's martial arts are definitely better than ours. This is absolutely true. Yuan Weiqing turned to look at LV Hushan and asked tentatively, LV Hushan, are you sure? LV Hushan nodded. Of course, I'm very sure that Old Zhang's martial arts are better than ours. Yuan Weiqing was a little curious and asked doubtfully, LV Hushan, why are you so sure? Have you seen it before? LV Hushan nodded. Of course, if I haven't seen it before, how can I be sure? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing's eyes suddenly lit up. Does it mean that old Zhang's martial arts are really good? LV Hushan nodded and said with a sneer, Yuan Weiqing, it's more than good. I only saw it once, and I know that his martial arts are definitely much better than mine. Yuan Weiqing turned to look at LV Hushan and asked tentatively, LV Hushan, I'm really curious. Tell me, how did you know that old Zhang knows martial arts? Let me see it. Chapter 8:15. LV Hushan slowly said, Once, I went to the nearby woods to practice martial arts, and I saw old Zhang. I remember very clearly that at that time, I had just finished practicing a set of saber techniques and was resting when I saw old Zhang pushing his big cart over. Yuan Weiqing, do you remember that there was a small river by the woods, and there were many big stones on the side of the river? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing nodded. Of course I remember. Every time I went to the river, I would drink a little water when I was thirsty. How could I forget? LV Hushan turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and slowly said, Old man Zhang went to the riverside to wash his hands. I don't know why, but she picked up his carrying pole and suddenly threw it at a big stone by the riverside. Yuan Weiqing, can you guess what happened? Hearing LV Hushan speak so mysteriously, Yuan Weiqing was a little curious and hurriedly asked, LV Hushan, quickly tell me, what happened? LV Hushan nodded. Yuan Weiqing, such a big stone, old Zhang just lightly waved his carrying pole, and the big stone was smashed into pieces, but the carrying pole in his hand was not damaged at all. Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, I don't know the name of the move that old Zhang used at that time, but in short, it gave people a feeling of returning to their original state. Such a simple blow can make people think of countless moves. Speaking of this, LV Hushan sighed and continued, Yuan Weiqing, I am a little ashamed to say that I still haven't thought of a way to break old Zhang's move. 3 years, I have been thinking about it for 3 years, but I still can't break old Zhang's move. It can be imagined how profound old Zhang's move is. Old Zhang's move is profound, and the power of this blow is amazing. Such a big stone was easily smashed by him. Yuan Weiqing, think about it, old Zhang has such a subtle move and has such power. His martial arts must be far better than mine. LV Hushan sighed and said, Yuan Weiqing, I'm afraid I'm not the only one. Even if it were you, I can guarantee that you wouldn't be able to use such an exquisite move. And that kind of shocking power is simply unimaginable. I can assure you that old Zhang is using the flat pole that he usually uses. It's made of ordinary wood, and yet it's able to unleash such power. Yuan Weiqing, do you think that if you were given a carrying pole, you would be able to smash a stone without any damage? After listening to LV Hushan's explanation, Yuan Weiqing was suddenly shocked, and even his voice trembled a little. LV Hushan, is what you said true? You have been thinking about it for 3 years, and you still can't break old Zhang's move? LV Hushan nodded with a wry smile. Yuan Weiqing, I'm ashamed to say this. For the past 3 years, I've always had that godlike move in my mind. I've always wanted to resolve this move, but no matter what method I use, although I can block the attack of this move, I can't block the changes of this move. So powerful! Yuan Weiqing looked at LV Hushan in surprise. Old Zhang has such a subtle move, how come I have never heard of it for so many years? LV Hushan sighed and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, maybe this is the style of the expert. He is very low-key and never shows his martial art. If I didn't see it by accident that time, maybe I wouldn't know that old Zhang is an expert among experts. After hearing L.V. Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned and said with some doubts, L.V. Hushan, it shouldn't be. If old Zhang is so good at martial arts, why does he still do that kind of work? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for L.V. Hushan to answer his question. L.V. Hushan, if he is really as good as you say, as long as he stands up, Hall leader Shui will definitely assign him an important position, and he won't have to do the cleaning work anymore. Isn't that good? L.V. Hushan waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, how can we understand the world of the expert? I think he must want to hone himself in the ordinary, so he chose this job, right? Yuan Weiqing nodded. L.V. Hushan, you are right. There are indeed many experts who like to do this kind of low-key work. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing hesitated for a moment and thought carefully in his heart for a while, then he shook his head with a wry smile. L.V. Hushan, to be honest, if you didn't say it, I wouldn't have thought that old Zhang, who we usually see, is actually an expert. It's really unexpected. L.V. Hushan sighed. If I didn't see it by accident, I'm afraid I would have been kept in the dark. Yuan Weiqing turned to look at L.V. Hushan and asked tentatively, L.V. Hushan, old Zhang's martial arts are so good. Haven't you thought about learning from him? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, L.V. Hushan blushed and said with a sigh, At that time, after I saw old man Zhang's ingenuity, I went back and tried to think of a way to resolve it, but even after thinking for a long time, I still couldn't think of anything. So, I thought of a way to worship him as my teacher and let him teach me martial arts. After hearing L.V. Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing's eyes suddenly lit up and he asked with a smile, L.V. Hushan, how was it? Did he promise you? L.V. Hushan shook his head with a wry smile. No, he didn't promise me. Yuan Weiqing frowned. Could it be that you're not sincere? L.V. Hushan shook his head. No, when I went there, I brought a lot of gift, and after I went there, in order to learn exquisite martial arts, I immediately knelt in front of him and begged him to accept me as his disciple. Yuan Weiqing hurriedly asked, L.V. Hushan, how did he refuse you? L.V. Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, I really didn't expect old Zhang to run away immediately after seeing me kneel in front of him. He also said that he didn't want to be my teacher. At this point, L.V. Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. I guess it must be that old Zhang didn't like my aptitude, so he refused to accept me as his disciple. Speaking of this, L.V. Hushan's eyes lit up. He turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked tentatively, Yuan Weiqing, do you think old Zhang stayed in the secret thunder sect in the South County to find a person with excellent aptitude to be his disciple? After hearing L.V. Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing nodded in agreement. L.V. Hushan, what you said makes sense. If it wasn't for this reason, with his skills, how could he do such an ordinary job? It seems that it must be so. With his skills, maybe he used to have a high status. Maybe he came to our secret thunder sect in the South County to find a person with excellent aptitude to be his disciple. After all, for an expert like him, reputation and status are no longer important. The most important thing is to pass down his brilliant martial arts. Hearing that Yuan Weiqing agreed with his idea, L.V. Hushan nodded with a smile. Yuan Weiqing, you're right. He did this job to find a good disciple and pass down his peerless martial art. Speaking of this, L.V. Hushan sighed. It's a pity that he didn't take a fancy to me. Otherwise, my martial arts wouldn't be so bad now. Yuan Weiqing nodded. Yes, if he was willing to teach you, even if he only taught you 1 or 2 moves, I'm afraid your martial arts would improve a lot. L.V. Hushan turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked tentatively, Yuan Weiqing, do you think old Zhang will help me? Hearing this question, Yuan Weiqing frowned. L.V. Hushan, old Zhang doesn't have the intention to accept you as his disciple. How could he help you? Hearing this, LV Hushan suddenly froze, then shook his head with a wry smile. Yuan Weiqing, for an expert like him, who knows what he's thinking? Maybe he was in a good mood that day and rushed over to help me this time. Do you think it's impossible? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing nodded and said slowly, LV Hushan, it's reasonable to say that it's possible. The snow leopard is very powerful for us, but it's easy to deal with an expert like old Zhang. Maybe he just happened to be there, so he helped you this time. But he didn't want to accept you as his disciple, so he secretly helped you but refused to tell you who he was. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's explanation, LV Hushan nodded with a smile. That's right. After hearing what you said, I understand. Things must be like this. With old Zhang's martial arts, helping me with this matter is as simple as eating and drinking. And he really didn't want to accept me as his disciple, so it's possible that he didn't want me to know. Yuan Weiqing nodded, LV Hushan, so the person who helped you at the back of the mountain must be old Zhang. LV Hushan nodded. Thinking of old Zhang's peerless martial arts, his face was full of yearning. Yuan Weiqing, if I can go back this time, I must worship old Zhang as my master and ask him to teach me martial arts. Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, don't forget that he already rejected you last time. Will he agree this time? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, have you never thought that old Zhang might have rejected me to test me? He wants to see if I have a strong will. If I insist on worshipping him as my master, I believe that one day he will be moved by me. Don't you think so? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing nodded. LV Hushan, you're right. As long as you're sincere enough, maybe you can really become old Zhang's disciple? LV Hushan rubbed his hands happily. Yuan Weiqing, if old Zhang is really willing to accept me as his disciple, that would be great. I don't have to practice martial arts like him. Even if I only practice half of it, I'll be satisfied. Yuan Weiqing smiled and waved his hand. LV Hushan, how can that be? Since he is willing to accept you as his disciple, he will definitely teach you martial arts wholeheartedly. At that time, it won't be a matter of learning half of it, but a matter of the student surpassing the master, right? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's flattery, LV Hushan was overjoyed. He nodded hurriedly and said with anticipation, Yuan Weiqing, if old Zhang really accepts me as his disciple, that would be great. Looking at LV Hushan, who was full of joy, Yuan Weiqing felt very uncomfortable. To be precise, he was jealous. Why could a person like LV Hushan get the help of a master like old Zhang? He had struggled in the Tanlei sect in the South County for so many years, but old Zhang had never helped him. No, not only did old Zhang not help him, but he also always bullied old Zhang. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing was a little shocked, because he remembered that he had really bullied old Zhang to the point of choking. Every time he saw that old Zhang did something wrong, he would step forward and kick old Zhang to the ground without saying a word. Thinking of how he kicked old Zhang until he screamed and begged for mercy, Yuan Weiqing felt very happy in the past. But now, he only felt a chill in his heart. He had bullied such a master. Would old Zhang take revenge on him in the future? It was not revenge, because according to what LV Hushan said, old Zhang only needed to use one finger to deal with him. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing's forehead was already covered in cold sweat. He never expected that he would accidentally offend such a master. It was like a natural disaster that could not be stopped. Yuan Weiqing frowned and blamed old Zhang. You are a martial arts master. Why did you pretend to be a cleaner? You made me bully a master every day. I was a little scared now. What should I do? It seemed that even if I escaped from Vice Hall Master Zhang today, I would not be able to escape from old Zhang in the future. Vice Hall Master Zhang's surname was Zhang, and old Zhang's surname was Zhang too. Why did the Zhang family make things difficult for him? There was a more important problem. According to the original plan, as long as he woke up Hall Master Shui and got rid of Vice Hall Master Zhang, he would immediately tell Hall Master Shui about this matter and ask him to get rid of LV Hushan. But now it seemed that this plan would not work. If he got rid of LV Hushan now, and old Zhang knew the truth, how could he let him go? If LV Hushan was really the person he was testing, then he would have no chance anymore. Or rather, Yuan Weiqing subconsciously looked around, wanting to see if old Zhang was hiding to protect LV Hushan. Seeing Yuan Weiqing sweating, LV Hushan could not help but frown and ask in confusion, "Yuan Weiqing, what's wrong with you? Why are you sweating so much?" Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing was suddenly taken aback. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Nothing, I am just thinking about something, so I am a little nervous." Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he pretended to laugh and continued. "LV Hushan, you also know that I am willing to sweat when I am thinking. Don't mind it. Let's think about how to deal with Vice Hall Master Zhang." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.